Chapter 1. The following content is not set in the real world. Please substitute for a similar parallel world template. Other than the similarities in culture, everything else is different. At night, the cold moonlight shone on the ground. In the hidden corners, many blurry figures could be vaguely seen. Everyone must be careful. The target is a high IQ criminal. Don't give him any chance to escape. Roger. After everyone arrived at the designated location, small capsules were thrown in through the door and the cracks in the window. With a slight bang, the capsule exploded and choking smoke instantly filled the entire room. After estimating that the hypnotic gas had taken effect, the special forces wearing gas masks quickly kicked open the door and rushed in. Report: no target found in the bedroom. Report: no target found in the kitchen. Report: no target found in the living room. Report: no secret passage found in the room. Hearing the bad news one after another, Chang Yuan, who was originally happy, immediately became gloomy. Damn it, why is it like this? Where are the intelligence personnel? What are they doing? Why didn't anyone report the disappearance of the target? Don't blame them. Director Yu? The hypnotic gas in the room had been dispelled. Ho Zhenyu walked to the bookshelf and took out a book called Analysis of Dreams. If I'm not wrong, they were hypnotized. On one side of the bookshelf, there were various manga figurines. On the other side, there were various books related to psychology such as Self and ID, and Fantasy is Reality. Huyu's eyes widened. Wait a minute, didn't the initial report say that the target was just a high IQ otaku? Do you think an otaku can fool the police? Ho Zhenyu sighed and shook his head. Even if he's an otaku, he's an extremely dangerous otaku. Chang Yuan nodded silently. That's right. Why would a proper otaku read this? His bookshelf was not even big enough for a figurine. Looking at the small photo frame on the table, many police officers nodded in grief and indignation. What happened to the fat otaku? With such a handsome and sunny face, how could he live up to the title of otaku? Traitor Hatue. Who you still couldn't understand. But he had a direct conflict with the victim, and he was one of the first people to be summoned by the police. Didn't the person who made the record notice anything strange? Ho Zhenyu closed the book and sighed again. On one hand, he hid it too well. His teachers, classmates, friends, and family all came to the same conclusion. On the other hand, it was also because there were too many people who had a grudge against the victim's family behind to bully elementary school others who were summoned at that time. This kind of thing shouldn't be anything to brag about, suspicious. Seeing everyone say that Kakashi left out a gentle tone. After all, if you don't kill with Kakashi, you can also still give himself away under our close investigation, so he had his ninja destiny as I understand everyone's desires and concerns police officers, so I will try my best to play a role in the future, no matter how difficult the enemy, and at the same time, as long as their identities were exposed, just treat me as your death awaited them. The next day, they really think that they could rely on their own abilities to do whatever they wanted to get the freshman sitting in the however, and said Genyu's expression was inconsistent. After saying goodbye to her father, first row was obviously a little nervous. The police officer ran in the classroom and said, only the front row was still playing with us at a time like this. My name is Shinichi. At this moment, nice voice suddenly came from Ho Zhenyu. Seeing that he sat down after saying that, Karina's smile was full of expectations for the beautiful school. In order to avoid harming, it didn't take long. We still have a lot of character names we are given introduced more about themselves. Although it was early, Ho Zhenyu's expression changed. The freshmen were sitting in the second row and quickly added together. Then Howard, the one who was surrounded by them, was the person on the other end of the phone. I am real Mizuki-san. We were not down by strangers. I want to dominate. When we woke up, strangers becomes muted him in a row. However, there are no casualties on our side. Very powerful speech. Then the next one stood up from no casualties. I have no hobby. Then introduced them to each other. This is Maki Amazee. I said I wanted to become Naruto's man, not be discovered. Are you still a four-year-old child? Abandoned school. Becoming Naruto's man isn't something that can be decided. You have to be careful. Someone said everyone greeted each other with target. You must not. The one who wants to become Naruto's man is me. Although everyone in town became more content of the call. Because Garashi said, "Come on, don't be for everyone." Seeing that Karina understood quite quickly and looked at Garashi with sweating stars in her eyes. Ho Zhenyu shook his deliberate guidance. You should know how the other party gave himself away. Everyone calmed down. Chang Yuan to the relationship between everyone went to the hospital to see Doctor. There were even a lot of originally students who entered the classroom directly rushed to their good friend Garashi, who had joined already suddenly stood up by the mentality. Takatani said Sarazawa bell rang under the pressure of death. Can you listen to all the focus of the investigation back on him and connect some of the small details that had been distinguished in the case scratched his head. As he spoke, he shook his head outside and simply felt there was alive against her arms and cancer out so rare that it's named after him in their heart. No wonder he was so desperate at this moment. But there were a small number of clear headed found out about realized not only the three of them, but the students who were fanning the flames when the eighth awakening walked into the classroom. He hypnotized those doctors. He was surprised to find an ordinary disease described by his seniors did not appear. He's not hiding out now because he wanted his seniors immediately in their seats. Of course it's because when he walked up to the strongest ninja in the valley has been killed. I want everyone the only one to recognize me. Who you was furious. Although the voices were messy that it might become Naruto's Naruto's and it sounded like Joe treating this as a game. The eight saints were everyone had a subtle expression. Everyone else felt humiliated. The first two reasons in his heart, but at the same time he couldn't help but my idea may be according to their analysis. In my opinion, the other party should not show anything strange as humble, sincere, but is extremely proud in his heart. It's not the reason why he took the initiative to expose himself is probably only those who are recognized by the people can become Naruto. Hogenyu took a deep breath. For the freshmen who haven't established a concept of life, to die in the most desperate can't be considered enlightening. Chang Yuan still gives them a very powerful and reasonable feeling. You mean he deliberately let Zhang San looked a little dazed after listening to Garashi's words. And then when Zhang San reaches the peak, those who are recognized from heaven to hell all of a sudden. Looking at everyone's inexplicably excited expression, if he does that. Garashi struck while the iron was suddenly stuck in her throat because she remembered that Lin Yushan had cancer. And carrying now everything alone will inevitably lead to trouble has just begun. I think you have also heard the story of Shodame-sama. Madman, this guy is definitely a madman. The reason why Shodame-sama can become Naruto's in their hearts, isn't it because such an enemy was really the village and his companions in an abandoned factory? If you can't even get the recognition of your classmates, I can give you money, get the recognition of the other people in the village. A fashionably dressed young man was tied to an iron chair, the elementary school and shouting Garashi's previous life. However, the young man on the other side turned a deaf ear to him. Even if you write a beautiful story, it won't be very convincing. Into the fashionable after all, young man's children don't like to listen to too many reasons. What is this? When they heard the first paragraph, asked the three of them were still confused. Oh, this is a medicine that can make you more sensitive. As an example, Lin Yushan their thoughts quickly changed. More sensitive? I'm sorry, I'll let you be Naruto's man. It can multiply the pleasure you get. You can be Naruto's man. The same goes for the behind you. Lin Yushan I don't have to be Naruto's man knife as long as you don't let Zhang San's beat me after you become Naruto's man. It's fine. But Zhang San screamed like a pig. Saint was relieved, but at the same time he couldn't help but laugh. What do they think Naruto's man is? Also, Garashi. I haven't sprinkled salt. Saint's eyes stopped at the gentle little boy. Smiled and took out a bag of salt ideas and vision beyond ordinary devil, people. You perverted devil. Maybe he is the one who can really become Naruto's man. Bubbles floated out of his nose. His legs kept rubbing against the ground, trying to get away from this devil. I like small animals. The chair that was slurped by my dream is not to become a gourmet. His small body could move. My name is Shigeki Izaki. Didn't you feel good when you were racing? The self-introduction is finally this is 10,000 times more exciting than racing. Then he saw a boy in the back row with a serious face stand up and say, "What do you want?" My name is Marino Zhang San's face was covered in snot and tears, and my dream is to torture Kage from other villages one day. I've already paid you the money. The corner of Awakening's mouth twitched slightly. Were all children nowadays so dangerous? That's strange. Finally, it was Garashi's the one who got those thugs to take the money back. He was already the focus of the crowd. Zhang San's expression and after the previous incident, he actually did not care about the compensation money. Garashi did this because he was unhappy about the experience of being summoned to the police station. With a gentle voice, if he knew that he would provoke such a pervert, my hobby is never have let his underlings teach him a lesson. I hope to become a medical ninja and use medical ninja. Although he was regretting it, Zhang San still held on. Many people were surprised, just because Garashi's self-introduction was so shocking. But on the contrary, seeing Zhang San's confused face, Lin Yushan was so ordinary that it was incomprehensible. They were all blown up, and in the system of the major ninja villages. After that, women generally serve as medical ninjas in the photos. Not only because women pay more attention to details in the photos, but also because of the three major rules of medical ninja. Medical ninjas must never be at the forefront of the battlefield. Zhang San screamed, and a man with a little shame would not allow himself to hide in the back. If he could do it all over again, if it were other people, they might be mistaken for deserters. At this moment, but the urgent alarm sounded. When you have a good impression of a person, you will subconsciously beautify the other person. Police, the police are here. Not only did Zhang San was Garashi was a coward, he had never looked forward to the arrival of the police as much as he did today. San is really a gentle person. Chief, we down to earth. Accidentally, this kind of temperament the alarm can go further on the road. But can this really make the other party careless? San was now more and more satisfied. A police officer asked doubtfully. He actually didn't dislike those who shouted that they wanted to become rushing here. Who didn't have a big goal when they were a little impatient. It's just that when they grow up, they gradually understand the gap between fantasy and reality. It's precisely because of this that it highlights the preciousness of those excellent and humble people. Came from the headset. After Garashi, many people introduced themselves. The target is in the blind spot of the last few seats. The only place we can aim at is in a straight line with the hostages. It wasn't strange for him to receive this kind of attention because he was the son of Naruto. Then we'll consider it from the third level. Asuma wasn't afraid at all knowing that the police are deliberately luring them. He didn't stand up either. The other party will be vigilant. He just crossed his arms deliberately and leaned back in his chair. At this time, we'll break through from other directions. I have many hobbies. My goal is asked to surpass Naruto. What if the other party is standing on the fourth level? His goal. Seeing his arrogance was obvious. Chang Yuan quickly Unfortunately, the response was mediocre. What do you mean by other directions? Children were never short of fantasies. Mouth twitched a few times. It wasn't that they said Asuma couldn't achieve his goal, deliberately provoking them to reveal flaws. Oh, this dream is our target to Zhang San. Oh. Chang Yuan's body stiffened when he saw everyone's gaze fly to the back. Hey, at least give me some reaction. Taking a deep breath, what was even more awkward was that everyone was looking at the person behind him. Stop. If he lowered his arm, he would appear to be timid. A similarly if he continued to hug her from the factory, he would feel that everyone was looking at him as a joke. Not in line with your standards. You should know that it's impossible for me to stop. After they finished their introductions, like everyone's eyes returned to the podium. Between you and scum like him quickly lowered his stiff arms. Zhang San, who was looking at the outside world, he couldn't understand why the other party's words of wanting to become a medical ninja caused such a big commotion. If you say that. But his shocking statement of wanting to surpass Naruto didn't get everyone's attention. For the law, could it be that this was the world of adults? After doing such a thing, of course, 5 years old, no longer as simple as before. I understood this principle the moment I took my first step. Everyone in the police force to attract everyone's attention. The other party had a very clear understanding of what he was doing of each other. He did not think that what he was doing was righteous of this class. Nor did he have the idea of whitewashing evil like ordinary criminals. Seeing that some of the students showed a psychological defense of this kind of person was very difficult to break through. A qualified group must have its own leader. That your heart still yearns for the light. Just as a country needs a daimyo, otherwise a ninja village needs a Kage. Why did you drive away the local people before taking action for so many bombing cases? As soon as his voice fell, too much. The class instantly became to make the game more pure. And Yagami-sensei, at this time, Hojinyu shouted through the loudspeaker. For example, Zhang San, lower your head. Sensei, Zhang San, can the class monitor get extra points on the graduation exam? Lowered his head. Yagami-sensei, if I become the class monitor, will my parents stop force's line of sight? Saint looked at the little fatty Shinto with the trigger without any hesitation. Just how much did your parents hate you? With a bright trail of flame, the sniper bullet instantly shot between the class monitor is not an official position. You can't have the title blossom. You can't get extra points, body fell to and you can't stop your parents from beating you. Seeing this, the police force who were still waiting outside could not believe it. In short, the original intention of electing a class monitor is to serve everyone, even Hojinyu's expression changed, and he felt that it was extremely unreal. Everyone's surging emotion was suddenly first, but was quickly overwhelmed by the tide of joy. I can't even take care of myself, so I don't want to serve everyone. Didn't you want to kill me? Situation that didn't you die in the end? Felt a bit awkward. Just you wait. Did he go overboard? I'll kill everyone related to you. Anything to remedy the situation. Hearing Zhang San's nonsense, Garashi raised his right hand. Was gloomy. Saint's eyes lit up. Although Lin Yushan is a bastard, this guy is also a scumbag. Yagami-sensei, what he did is enough to be shot 10 times. In the class monitor election. Organize the eyes of everyone and contact the other victims to initiate a lawsuit. Are you talking about Garashi? Yes. Although I don't want to be a class monitor, I don't like to be controlled by others. They had to rescue the hostages. It doesn't seem from the perspective of ordinary people. Well, I also support Garashi by looking at that kind of scumbag. In the back corner, then let's go in and rescue him now. Chang Yuan smiled maliciously. In the world of ninjas, at this strength is the foundation. Belonging to Lin Yushan was to spend time helping others. Hi everyone. However, before he finished his words, he found that the girl he had been paying attention to showed an expression of admiration. Then he screamed in horror. Ghost, well, as expected of Garashi-san, you won't let me go even after on the right side of Garashi. Her eyes to say flashing a little bit of starlight again while Since Garashi sat in the middle of the classroom. When this voice is heard, it means that I'm really dead. Therefore, most of the people who didn't want to integrate into his small, doesn't it feel good to return to the human world from hell? Hearing Asuma's whisper, hearing the voice say that was sitting in front of him, indeed dead, nodded subconsciously. Zhang San could not help but breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that it's a thankless task. Before he could completely relax, either stupid he heard the gentle voice suddenly turn cold. Like Garashi, he is a victim of the second shinobi human world to hell again. Orphans like him are eager to be recognized by others. Therefore, this seeing that Garashi easily got what he dreamed everyone of, retreat a kind of emotion called jealousy grew in his young heart. The consequences. But he also knows that this kind of thing is not good, starts so when buried his feelings in his heart. The time is at 3 minutes. Moment, seeing that at this time many police officers had already entered the factory and were ready to rescue the hostages, hoping to stand on the same side as Asuma. But when they heard the director's firm order, they could also want to run for class monitor. After all, they did not want to risk their lives to save a scumbag. Suddenly, the eyes of the two people solidified. Zhang San's the ultimate meaning of backstabbing. Now that he saw these police officers abandoning him and running away, his heart. He was so scared that he peed his son of Naruto betray the revolution so quickly. I'm still here, take me with you and run away. Asuma was also alert. You all police officers? This guy actually saw that he wanted to please the hostages and run away. You trash, did you even hear what I said? While he was infuriated, Lin Yushan's voice didn't want others to know that he was paying attention to the red-eyed girl. Too much nonsense just now. So without waiting for Mizuki to finish his words, he gave Mizuki a subtle glare. Mizuki naturally didn't dare to contradict the most powerful second generation in the village, screamed like a pig, so he hurriedly lowered his head, his body full of resentment. At this time, the 8 gods also reacted. Asma, accompanied by a scream of despair and fear, president, the airwaves were noisy, Asma the fire proudly raised his surrounding ground shook violently. Am I not qualified? The fire swallowed all the evil. Of course not, as long as you are a member of this class. Our lives. Anyone is qualified. Looking at the monstrous fire, the police officers were scared. The 8 gods only felt they could not help but look at the director with gratitude. Election was more of a joke. In order to let the other party die in despair, he wasn't worried about Garashi's failure. He actually used his own death as a part of the plan. Asma's popularity was far worse than the fire with a complicated gaze. What he was really worried about was that the most terrifying trouble with Garashi after losing the election. Everyone nodded although he believed that Naruto kind of person was really too trivial matter, but as the son of Naruto with some worry, director, although the later find someone willing to teach Garashi a lesson. We did not throw caution. As a member of the Ninja Academy, he was very clear about the existence of public knew about this. And what's more terrible is that under this kind of hidden rules, if it is intervention of teachers will only make things too much consideration. I can only expand the scope so that he won't lose so badly. But if it is to save a scumbag, then I will never agree to use their lives to exchange for that scumbag's life. Is there anyone who wants to only know how to talk if they have the guts? It doesn't matter. Come and find me face to face. You don't have to care. Director. It's a pity that among these freshmen, there was no one like Garashi who understood the meaning of the song. Looking at the fire, and many of them even looked around with righteous indignation. What a pity. Whoever dares to compete with Garashi-san is going against year 41 early Ryosuke. The cold morning wind was blowing fresh and soft. I won't submit to anyone. Making the people who got up early to shiver, guy see but at the same time, they couldn't help but not easy to breath of the fragrance of spring. Seeing this, the 8 sank. There weren't many pedestrians on the road, but everyone's face was full of hope. Write down the name of the person at the beginning of the new year and hand it in after you're done. Forward to welcoming the arrival of a new life. Listening to the rustling sound of the end of the second Shinobi World War, secretly. Although the scars left by the war haven't been completely wiped out, as the son of Naruto won't make him lose too badly. Life is always about looking forward. Everyone finished writing the notes and brought them to the podium. There will be a separate chapter to voting data later, and his expression became very interesting. Eminence was running in small hands and thinking about what happened this morning. He couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Wait, teacher, unlike other children who are retired in a ninja school, becoming a teacher has always been his dream. There's no need to announce the exact number of votes. Too excited last night and couldn't sleep. How can that be? When the alarm rang in the morning, has to be fair and jumped out of bed like a carp. If you don't want to announce he slept too deeply, he flopped on the bed like a salted fish and fell asleep again. Since you insist, but fortunately it's not too late. Looking at the time of 7:20 on his watch, jumped up from his Eminence was secretly and when he passed relieved by Garashi, today is only the enrollment day. There shouldn't be any new students coming this early. He just glanced at it and became excited. Walking to the gate of the school, there was no one near the enrollment area. Said loudly, proudly looking at Garashi from the corner of his eyes. Relaxed. Unfortunately, I knew it. How Garashi was smiling and just as Eminence was about to tidy up his clothes and enter the school in his most energetic state, Asma grunted twice and suddenly appeared in the corner of his eyes. Then continued to look at the pile of papers. And the smile on his face suddenly froze. Shimizu Garashi, it was a little boy holding a Garashi, although he wasn't as tall as the broom. His every time he pulled out a piece of paper, obviously he wasn't the kind of person who cleaned for fun to leave a good impression on others. Asma said in a hoarse and weak voice, Eminence suddenly reacted after a holiday. The school was so clean that not even a leaf could be seen. The number of students in the ninja school in the original voice too small. The little boy turned his head and immediately ran over excitedly. It's impossible to imagine how to make up the number of ninja. You didn't come here yesterday, so here it's appropriate to increase a little bit. The clean and tidy school and seemed to drain all his strength. No, I've only lowered his head and only felt that every gaze was full of ridicule and malice. In fact, no one is laughing at him. People only care about the winner. And thinking for the loser, he couldn't even compare to a child, was a waste of energy. The 8th Awakener screamed madly in his heart. I knew student Shushi but on the surface he nodded calmly. It's a pity I don't know which traitor voted for that guy. This seems to be a teacher with a lot of inner drama. Asuma finally realized to himself as he observed the movements of the 8 Awakeners. That vote seems to have been cast by me. The 8 Divine Saints also recovered from their awkward situation to hide in something else. He was so excited that he didn't even clean up the entire campus in 2 hours. Great, not only did it show that the other party was extremely efficient, leaned over, but it also showed that the other party had a very strong will. Well, thank you for your trust in me. Subconsciously put himself politely responded to everyone's congratulations. He wouldn't even be honor and cheers are all his task of cleaning for 10 minutes. Asma saw this to be able to withstand temptation and not be tempted by external things as a real ninja. Shimizu Garashi the Awakener nodded with satisfaction. But now I want to challenge you again. Although he didn't know what kind of talent the method to determine the winner. With this kind of self-control, he believed that he would definitely become an excellent ninja. You should have learned how to refine chakra. At the very least, he has to be better than me. Don't you think Eminence walked over to the registration office with a smile? Asma
Come
asked
over here.
dumbfoundedly.
The sooner you finish the registration
He doesn't have
procedures,
chakra yet?
the sooner you can take
From
the
the age
admission
of 5 to
documents and
15,
go home to
the
rest.
human body develops the
Name.
fastest.
Garashi
And it's also the
Shimizu
best age
Garashi.
to practice ninjutsu.
5
Because
years
of this,
old.
the ninja school
Parents.
opened classes at the
Garashi
age
was
of 5
silent
to
for a
teach
moment
children
and
of the
said
right
with a
age
sad
to
face.
refine chakra.
However,
Sacrificed in
just
the
as
war.
there are no two
The eighth
identical
awakener
leaves in the
right
world,
hand that was
there are
taking
real
notes
differences
stiffened.
between people.
I'm sorry, I
People
didn't
with
know
good
you.
physical fitness
He also
can refine
regretted that he was
chakra in
still too
advance,
young and didn't
and
make
it's
enough
impossible for the
preparations.
ninja school to
This
let
kind
every
of sensitive
student be stuck
question
at
could
the
have
age
been
of 5
directly
to enter
skipped.
the school.
Garashi bit his lower lip and shook his head slightly.
Therefore, practicing
It's okay,
chakra in
Sensei, it's
advance
been
is
2
generally
years.
the patent of
I
big
won't
ninjas,
cry again.
and this advantage under
He
the
lost his
unspoken
parents
rules
at
is
the age
actually
of
a
3.
tacit understanding
The
of
eighth
everyone.
awakener was a little
Yagami
depressed.
nodded.
Although
Garashi
the village will give
San is
subsidies
different
to
from
the
you.
families
He
of
doesn't have
ninjas
a
who died
special
in the
teacher
war.
to teach him.
It's still too
It
difficult
seems
for a
he's
3-year-old
the one who
child to
doesn't
live
have
independently.
anything.
No
Asma
wonder he so
subconsciously opened his mouth, and
The
after a
eighth
long
awakener
while,
sighed
he apologized
secretly
and
in a
looked
low
at
voice.
Shimizu Garashi with a softer
I'm
gaze.
sorry, I didn't know you
After
didn't know
registering the
ninjutsu.
information,
The
everyone
eighth
looked at the
awakener
scene
handed
with
the
surprise.
admission documents
This
to
arrogant guy
Garashi.
doesn't seem so
Well,
annoying
you should
anymore.
go home early.
Yagami also
too lonely
secretly
there.
breathed a sigh of
Garashi
relief.
looked sad.
Sure enough,
The eighth
Naruto-sama's
awakener
son
thought
can't
that
be
he
that
stepped
kind of
on a mine
unreasonable
again.
person.
Fortunately,
But don't
Garashi
expect
quickly
this
recovered
matter to be
and
over
clenched
when
his
you
small
learn
hands
ninjutsu.
and looked
I
at
will
the eighth
challenge you
awakener
again
with eager eyes.
Asma looked firmly
Sensei,
at Garashi.
let me stay here and
I
help.
just want to prove
The
that
eighth
only the weak
awakener
like you will huddle
subconsciously
together
wanted
to
to
refuse.
refuse.
Although
From the
he was
beginning,
just a new teacher,
Garashi
if
didn't
he
have
had
the
the
same
student
worries
to
as
help on the
Yagami,
first day,
whether
he
it's
would
the
be portrayal
portrayal
of the original
seniors.
historical
But seeing
trajectory
the
or his own
sincere look in
observation,
Garashi's
he
eyes,
can be sure the
that
words of
Asma is not
refusal
the
were
kind of
stuck in his
arrogant and
throat and
domineering
couldn't come out.
second-generation
It's
kid.
because he hates
At best,
loneliness
he can
that he's
only be
looking
regarded
forward
as
to
a
the
rebellious
rebellious
kid
and
who wants to
liveliness of
attract
the
the
school.
attention of his father
Aware
and
that he
some
grasped
people.
the other's
To
thoughts,
deal with this
the
kind of
eighth
kid,
awakener
sometimes
couldn't
you have
refuse.
to be even more childish than him.
Asma-san, the real strong
Garashi
don't
cheered
need to prove
excitedly.
anything. Seeing
Asma's
Garashi,
body
who has
trembled
always been more
slightly,
mature
calmed
than his
down,
peers,
and
finally
rethought
showing
the
a
words
side of him
Garashi
that's
said
in line
before.
with his age,
He seems to
the
smell
eighth
the
awakener
breath of the
also
same
smiled
kind.
with relief.
Then tell me
Although
what kind of
maturity
person
can
can
be
be regarded as the real
prize.
straw.
Of course,
Sensei, is there
the
anything I
person
can
who
help
can
with?
practice his ninjutsu and be
After the
unwavering.
excitement,
Garashi
Asma
looked at the eighth
subconsciously wanted to
awakener and
nod.
asked, but thinking
The
of his
eighth
current
awakener
position,
touched his
he
chin in a
forcibly
dilemma.
restrained the
It's
desire
just a
to nod his
registration.
head. What can he
So,
ask
I
little
will accept
Garashi
your
to help
challenge.
with? He can't just leave
What
the
did you say?
registration work to him. Didn't I already
Got it?
say before? The eighth
Only
awakener's
those who are
eyes lit up
recognized
and
by
said
everyone
with a
can
snap
be
of his
Naruto.
fingers.
Well,
Garashi
I'll take
said
you
word
around
by
the school
word
first,
and this
and
is
after
my
the
ninjutsu.
other
Students have finished
Many
registering.
people were still
You can show
confused,
them the
but Asma
classrooms,
already
the
understood.
playground, and the
So,
cafeteria.
you want to get my
Although he
approval
is a
to
new
accept the
teacher, he
challenge?
also came out of this
Strong,
ninja
you're the
school
real
10 years
strong.
ago. Plus, he
Everyone
came back
was
a
at a
few
loss.
days ago to take
Why
a look,
did the
so he can
touching
still
words
figure out
spoken
the
by
basic
Garashi
location.
have an
inexplicable
Yeah.
sense of shame when
Garashi
spoken
nodded
by
again
Asma.
and again.
This must
The
be
ninja
because
school
the
is
person
actually
who
not
spoke
that
was
big,
different, especially compared to
Asma didn't
Garashi's
care about
memories
the
from the
strange
other
gazes
world.
of the people.
In 10 minutes,
He was gradually
Garashi
getting into
followed
a good
the
mood,
eighth awakener
fighting
and
with a
walked
strong
around the
person
entire
like
ninja
you has
school.
always been my pursuit.
When they returned to
You
the
can say a
registration
definite
office,
time.
there were
If
still
Asma
only the
is the
two of them in
dominant
the
ninjutsu,
school.
then
There's
Garashi
no other
is the
way they
implicit
arrived too
ninjutsu.
early.
After
Perhaps
all,
the
he
eighth
still has to
awakener
take
felt
care
that
of
it was
his
a
own
bit
image,
awkward
as
for
long
the
as
two
he
of them
says
to
some
stand there
ambiguous
stupidly.
words to let
So during
Asma
the time they were
interpret him as a
waiting,
close
the
friend
eighth
of the
awakener
ninjutsu.
explained a lot
It
of
will be
interesting
fine.
things and little
Then
knowledge to
half a month,
Garashi. No matter if I
Finally,
win or
when the
lose, I
time
will do
came
my
to
best.
8:20,
A
only
new
half a
student
month.
arrived. What appeared in their line of sight was
Then
a
I
little
won't
girl
take
with
advantage of
blood-red
you.
eyes. I will tell you
La
my
la la,
chakra
the
refining
red-eyed
method
girl
to help
hummed
you
a song
master
and
chakra
walked
as soon
briskly.
as possible. When she saw the
Hey,
eighth
wait.
awakener,
The
her
eighth
eyes
saints
lit
hurriedly
up,
shouted,
and she quickly
"You
walked
leaked
to the
the
registration
Saratobi
office
clan's
and
chakra
asked,
refining
"Are you
method.
sensei?" Garashi will
Well,
be held
my name is the
responsible.
eighth awakener, who
You can
told you
also
it's the
call me eighth
Saratobi
sensei.
clan's chakra
The
refining
eighth
method.
awakener tried to squeeze
Asma
out a
squinted his
kind and
eyes and said
dignified
coolly,
smile.
"Don't forget,
little
that
girl,
person
what's
is
your
called
name?"
the ninjutsu
However,
professor.
in the eyes of
Also, it was
Garashi and the
developed
eighth
by
awakener,
Naruto-sama.
his smile was a
The
bit
eighth
funny.
saint suddenly
The
understood.
sensei doesn't
Then
seem
the
to be
corner of
very
his eyes
smart.
twitched.
Although
What
she
kind of
complained in
strange
her
name heart, she still replied seriously. He always felt that Naruto-sama's son was not normal. Kurenai. She is Kurenai? Garashi's face didn't change, but in his heart, he was secretly collecting information about the other party. The afterglow of the setting sun gradually disappeared on the horizon. Kurenai's information was like a soulless stone statue standing in the woods and familiarized herself with the school. Impossible. The two walked outside by side, and on the way, Kurenai tilted her head and looked at Garashi next to her and asked, "Chakra?" Asma came back to his senses and looked at Garashi with a complicated expression. In fact, she had been curious about Garashi, who was standing next to Sensei for a long time. Could it be that my talent as a ninja upbringing prevented her from asking abruptly? A person with average talent would take about half a month to a month to learn how to refine chakra. Kurenai classmate, but a genius could do it in 3 days. A new student who just entered school today said when he refined chakra in 3 days. Kurenai didn't get angry because of this, but apologized to learn how to refine chakra. After all, Garashi never said that he was recognized by him, and she was wrong about it. It was reasonable for him to learn how to refine chakra in 5 days. I didn't take the initiative to introduce myself. However, it hasn't even been 10 minutes since I started teaching. Then let's get to know each other again. Then what is he? Garashi. Asuma stared at Garashi as if he was looking at a monster. Kurenai nodded excitedly. Couldn't help but ask, "My name is Kurenai. How did you succeed in refining chakra in one try?" Then she asked with some doubt. Garashi shook his head slightly. "You're also a new student. This is not the first time I've refined chakra. You to familiarize me with the school?" Asuma was confused. If it wasn't for Sensei Yagami's arrangement, she wouldn't have called him by the wrong name. Maybe you don't know. Garashi smiled a little embarrassedly, but I've been working as a nurse for patients in the hospital. To Sensei Yagami, although I don't have chakra myself in the future, I've actually seen nurses refining chakra many times. Garashi explained with a smile and just clapped her hands and praised, Yagami Sensei, "You're such a nice about chakra system theory." Then she was a little embarrassed. If it were me, I wouldn't have the patience to help everyone. It wasn't that he was absent-minded or sleeping in class. Garashi had learned this knowledge in advance. Kurenai classmate, however, you don't have to compare yourself to theory. Everyone has a unique self. It was doubting and denying yourself will only make you unhappy. Garashi wasn't happy to be yourself. Asuma's reaction. Only then can we find the force that theoretical knowledge has never been valued. Yes. What the teachers value more is the students' practical operation and the ability to adapt. In addition to Kurenai, Garashi also guided many famous people. The school not only does not prohibit who always had a straight face, but even encourages the students holding a small ninja as long as the cheating method is not too obvious. And Asma, of course, the delinquent who almost missed the registration, he said slowly. Even the other students I learned how to refine chakra based on some of my previous understanding were treated with great enthusiasm by the refining method. This also made it so that on the first day, all the students remembered I didn't succeed. Shimizu Garashi. I have to refine after you taught me how to refine chakra. Chapter 3. Oh, so that's the case. Regarding the timeline, with so much foreshadowing, uses the article felt that it was much easier to accept. Written by Jianghu's, but what he didn't know was that just by watching others refine chakra and understanding the theory of chakra, if you want to see a detailed analysis, you can go to Jianghu to take a look. In fact, this is far more terrible than refining chakra for the first ninja history. This division is just to let everyone have a more intuitive understanding. You are also know that most of the Chigin Dojinshi, but I want to remind you that Naruto's only the foundation. 60th ninjutsu is the foundation of ninja. But the problem is, I've looked up a lot of ninjas may take a few years to learn the most source of this body techniques. Danyang also gave a picture of the book of formations. The rules are broken. With the end of the Fourth World War as the starting point, it introduced that Hashirama established would leave ninja 67 years at this point of view. In other words, after the Fourth World War ended, for the first time he felt like he had a confidant ninja. Let's go. I'll treat you to have a lot of bugs. But the manga doesn't explain it clearly, so it's still very useful for Kakashi and Obito also Naruto's appearance was 12 years old, and the Fourth World War without your help, I would be very troubled today. From this analysis, but is the relief money given by the village of Leaf Ninja? Asuma hesitated. Of course, this actually doesn't have much of an impact. Garashi's family was not very well used to this division can subtract 3 from my timeline. I'm still helping out in the hospital. For example, if the protagonist appearance in warmly like a small son, Leaf Ninja, at least treating a friend to a meal of the 38th year ramen is not a problem. The reason why I explain so much is because the experience of the previous 2 books tells me that if you don't explain things clearly, the reviews in the first few chapters will definitely be quite serious. By the way, I saw that your skill in controlling the chakra thread was very good. Since I've said this much, I might as well talk about some time bugs that might be mentioned and control of the body and mind. I won't explain them later. If you want to learn, I suggest you start with ordinary suture surgery. For example, by the way, you can pick up a lot of animal skin in the market that hasn't been peeled clean. Niji and the others were 13 years old. Talking about such a terrible thing in the most gentle tone, the age of the people in the same batch is basically the same. Looking back, I don't plan to be a puppet master or a medical ninja. Are the same age. Sandame Naruto's house. Sandame, Danzo, today should be Asuma's first day of same age, right? From this, that Asuma it can be seen that the age of the people in the Leaf Ninja school is basically the same. It's only the first day, as for the saying that would Leaf Jounin are basically Kakashi's batch. It is roughly derived from the content of manga 599. The ninja standing beside him replied and happened to meet Kakashi and the others who had just received their admission notice and were returning home. Oh. Kakashi, Rin, Mekai, and others were in that group. He knew that although the oldest in the picture at that time was 8 years older, he would never dare to lie to him about this kind of thing. How could they be in the same batch? Can you tell me what happened? What's even more embarrassing is that Kakashi graduated at the age of 5, so the Kakashi in the picture must be younger than 5 years old. He was the only one in the class who wanted to serve everyone, and he ran for the position of class less than 2 years old. Although he lost the election, even if the people in Naruto developed became friends with him, it's too ridiculous to go to school at the age of 2. Simplified in the picture, the Chunin exam of manga 599 clearly arranged home today because he wanted to help his friends master the method of refining chakra. In fact, it's easy to understand. Oh, just like Niji Hyuga. Those who take the Chunin exam at the same time may not necessarily be was a bit rebellious. By the way, talent was Kakashi is a Chunin at the age of 6, bordered soil and Rin graduated at the age of Naruto's son, but they actually appeared in the same Chunin exam. The election. In short,
the more
there are
he
a lot of
listened,
age
the more
bugs
he
in
felt
Naruto,
that something
so
was
I'll
wrong.
arrange these characters
Appreciate
according
each
to their
other,
age.
friend.
In the protagonist's batch, the
Sandame's
famous ones are
mouth twitched.
Kurinai, your words
Asma,
make me even more
Ibiki,
confused,
Shizen, and Mizuki.
Can you tell me the
Second,
details
when
of
it
the
comes to
incident?
the division of classes,
Takeuchi Daichi
let's talk
awkwardly
about
took out a
personality.
document and
The
handed it to
modifiers I
Sandame.
mentioned in the previous
Looking at the
chapter are
records
based
in the
on the
document,
characters when they were
Sandame's
young.
eyes twitched.
For example,
Asma's
Mizuki
performance
can't
was
pretend
indeed
to be a
very
hypocrite when he was
outstanding.
young.
After
Yes,
all,
his
this
old
kind of
eyes
thing
were
also
almost blinded
requires
by the light.
talent.
But
Students
soon,
may say
his
that
attention
Mizuki
was
wasn't
attracted by
necessarily
another
a bad
person
person
mentioned
when
in
he
the
was
document.
young.
But in fact,
The descendant
in the original
of a civilian
work,
ninja who
Mizuki
died
was
in the
jealous
war,
of Irika when
it's
he was
really
young
hard
because
for
he
him
was
to have such a
encouraged and
positive
helped by
attitude.
others. Although it
Sandame
may be
sighed
because of his
slightly,
later
but at this
experience,
time, his
it
eyes
should
were
also
suddenly
be
inseparable
inseparable
from
from
his
his
extreme
extreme personality, and he couldn't
Second,
look away.
Asma was
It's
a
not
steady
that
and
only the
easygoing
Hokage
person
can
in
be
the original
recognized
work,
by everyone,
but he also
but
had
only
the
the one
experience
who
of
is
being a
recognized
delinquent
by
when
the
he was
people
young.
can become
This
the
is actually
Hokage.
in addition to the
This
anime
belief,
version,
but later
Sandame
on in
was
the
really
manga,
moved this
there
time.
are also scenes of
He
Asma
couldn't
smoking
imagine
when
that
he was
such
young.
words came from
Although
the
it's
mouth of
hard
a
to say that he
5-year-old
was a
child.
delinquent when he
I
was
saw
young,
the glory
he should
of the
still be
will of fire
rebellious
in him.
Moreover,
It's because of
later
juniors
on,
like
he had
him
the
that everything
experience
we
of
do has
becoming one of the
meaning,
12
and
guardian
the will
ninjas.
of the heroes who
In the manga,
sacrificed
he
themselves in the war
apologized
can
to
be
the
passed
tombstone
down.
of Sandame that he
After
once left
pondering
with
for a
Leaf and
moment,
did things
Sandame
based on
said,
his own likes and
"Remember to
dislikes.
remind me about the
This should
battle in
still
half
be
a
able to
month."
explain that he had a
Takeuchi
rebellious
Daichi was
period when he was
surprised.
young.
Naruto,
In short,
Sama,
please
you
don't
going
completely
personally?
correspond the
Sandame
characters in the
smiled.
current
Don't
stage of
think
the
too
book
much,
to the
I'm just
original work.
concerned about
A
my
person's
son's performance
personality
as a
will
father.
change with the passage of
Takeuchi
time and
Daichi's
experience.
face suddenly understood.
Third,
Isn't it
regarding
just
the
a
age
tool
of if you
I
don't kill,
understand?
in chapter 14 of the manga, Kakashi said that if you don't killed all the examinees in the graduation
Chapter
exam
8,
10 years
at
ago and
night,
forced
would
Kirin
leave
to
Hidden
reform.
Village
In
but
a
the
somewhat
problem is that if you
dilapidated
don't
wooden
kill
house
setting
outside
states
the
that he
fifth
died
ring
at the
road.
age of 26
The light
and
emitted from the
graduated from the
kerosene
ninja
lamp
school at
filled
the
the
age of
entire
9.
room. If he died at the age of 26, his eyes
then he
were
graduated
scattered.
at the
His
age of
right
16.
hand holding a hard pen was casually writing and drawing on the paper. These were the words of his previous world, and they were written very carelessly. Even in that world, these scribbles were almost impossible to be recognized by anyone. This also makes it so that if someone finds out what he is doing, they will only think that it is a random scribble in a state of absent-mindedness. Some of his original plans for the near future are written on it, but the future is not static. Of course his plans will change. I didn't expect that I am really a genius. Thinking of this evening's matter, Garashi couldn't help but laugh. He originally intended to establish himself as a genius in order to compete for more resources. This is not difficult. If talent determines a person's upper limit, then hard work determines a person's lower limit. At least in Garashi's view, it is possible to build yourself into an ordinary genius through hard work and efficient learning methods. In this ninja world, geniuses are not synonymous with stability. Assassinations from hostile ninja villages and internal strife may cause geniuses to die midway. As Garashi himself knows, there are actually many talented freshmen in his batch, but in the original track of history, they didn't even leave their names. Mediocrity can indeed be a temporary protection, but the price is that it may be mediocre forever. He has no bloodline, no dojutsu, no background. If he doesn't strive for resources, maybe one mission, one war will make Shimizu Garashi's name disappear forever in the long river of history. Not even a ripple can be aroused. Especially when he knows the future Third and Fourth World War, this kind of pressure is even more urgent. Since the risk is unavoidable, Garashi is more willing to take the initiative in his own hands. At least, he doesn't want to be unable to make a decision about his death. And thinking optimistically, although these risks are unavoidable, the degree of risk can be adjusted by oneself. The way Garashi chooses is to get closer to Sandame. No matter what Sandame's reputation is, he's much more reliable than Danzo. Of course, this didn't mean that becoming friends with Asma meant that they were close to the third King Yenluo. The third King Yenluo could watch the Thousand Hands clan disappear, and he could bear to see the hero's son being bullied. Naturally, he wouldn't change his stance just because of Asma's friend. However, this didn't mean that the Sandame-sama was evil beyond redemption. As a politician, that was a mature and reasonable approach. The reason why the Senju clan was truly integrated into Woodleaf was because he had truly inherited Hashirama's philosophy. He wanted the people in the village to understand that going familial was inevitable. Making Naruto suffer was actually to make it easier for him to control this humanoid nuclear weapon. This high-risk weapon, if not controlled by the leader, is indeed a potential disaster. His way of thinking wasn't wrong. What was wrong was his method of doing things and his lack of control. Of course, this had nothing to do with Garashi. The only thing he had to do was to use Minato as a template. Civilian ninja, excellent talent, not limited to his own interests, willing to selflessly contribute to the village, this is simply the perfect embodiment of the will of fire. Garashi couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Even if there's already Minato, I think the third King Yenluo would never mind having Shimizu Garashi. The more heirs of the will of fire, the more it shows that his political views and approach are correct. As long as he could become the heir of the will of fire, in the eyes of the third King Yenluo, he would have absolute safety and would leave. The third King Yenluo could tolerate Danzo's nonsense in some small matters, but when it came to his ideals and path, it was absolutely impossible to take a step back. Because that would be a complete denial of his life and beliefs. Therefore, from the beginning, Garashi didn't think that the identity of Asuma's friend could affect the third King Yenluo much. What he really wanted to do was to use Asuma as a channel to convey his ideas to the third King Yenluo. When Garashi wasn't sure about his talent, he decisively accepted this duel because winning or losing was no longer the main purpose of this battle. Winning, there was a way to win, and losing, there was also a way to lose. Of course, he still wanted to win this battle as much as possible. My talent seems to be better than I thought. It seems that as an ordinary genius, maybe I should consider a more perfect opening, such as... Garashi's eyes looked through the window and fell on the dark street. Maybe I should meet Tsunade by chance? Although he himself was more interested in genjutsu because of some experience in his previous life, the future of medical ninjutsu seems to be brighter. And the most important reason why he chose to start with medical ninjutsu is because of Tsunade, or Shikatsu forest behind Tsunade. As a ninja, senjutsu is undoubtedly the best choice for him to strengthen himself. Not to mention, all three senjutsu can be accompanied by a powerful summon beast. One of the reasons why he chose to become a medical ninjutsu is to prepare for this. Chakra is formed by the complete fusion of physical energy, spiritual energy, and natural energy. The three must maintain a balance of 1/3 of each, otherwise there will be a danger of erosion by the power of nature. This requires extremely precise control of chakra, so he began to practice body control when he didn't even have chakra. As for why he chose Tsunade, the reason is actually very simple. She is better than the other two people. Needless to say, Orochimaru is his disciple, who knows when he will be planted with the mark of love. As for Jiraiya with the prophecy of Child of Prophecy, it is impossible for him to casually accept disciples, especially when he has Nagato on the outside and Minato on the inside. Although Tsunade's willpower is depressed, such a person is the best choice for him. Not to mention, there is also a bridge in his class for him to communicate with. Should I contact Shizun now? Garashi didn't think much about it and rejected this choice. Although he is the class leader, it would be strange for him to suddenly be so courteous to Shizun. It is best to let Shizun take the initiative to contact him. Then what about Genjutsu? With Kurenai as the foundation, it is not impossible to contact her father. Garashi silently said to himself. For someone like him who has no background, the easiest way to get the initial funds is of course to eat soft rice. Although eating soft rice from a 5-year-old little girl can't be described as shameful, he doesn't have much choice. Sometimes life is like this, one step slow, one step slow. I still can't do it. If I'm too impatient, there's a danger that my character will collapse. The best way is actually to take advantage of the situation after winning this duel. But this is back to the starting point. I have to defeat Asuma first. After thinking for a moment, Garashi laughed at himself in his heart. Oh, I seem to be putting the cart before the horse. Defeating Asuma is to gain attention and avoid risks. But if I act too impatiently, it might put me in danger. Moreover, to defeat Asuma, I don't need to go to that extent. I only need 1 or 2 basic ninjutsu, plus some psychological hints. Shushi yawned and looked at the paper full of scribbles. He pretended to shake his head helplessly, then put the paper on the kerosene lamp and lit it. He waited for the paper to burn, then stretched his body and walked to the bed. Tomorrow I'll get my first ninjutsu. As for the senjutsu and genjutsu, I'll wait until this matter is over and then slowly plan. PS1. I'm not trying to whitewash the third generation. In fact, in my eyes, everyone is a complicated individual. They are contradictory bodies made up of all kinds of intricate and complicated personalities. It's too arbitrary to judge a person with a black or white or a black or white or black view. Just like Sandaime-sama, in my opinion, he is not a qualified father, not a qualified teacher, and can't even be regarded as a good person in the subjective sense, but as a kage of the village from the perspective of those civilians and ordinary people, he should be called a qualified kage. After all, politicians should be a kind of ruthless existence, too emotional, maybe a disaster for the collective. In short, it is difficult to find a real bad person in this book. For the portrayal of characters, I will try to judge from an objective and fair point of view.
When I write about the death of the White Fang, I will say a few words because I really don't think that a strong person will be weak enough to choose to commit suicide because of some rumors, especially when his son is only 6 or 7 years old. PS2. Again, some readers may have doubts about my claim that Sandaime is a qualified Kage, because under his leadership, Konoha fell from the peak. But in fact, when Sandaime-sama took over with Leaf, the first and second Dame-sama had already died, and the village had no fighting power except for Uzumaki Mido, and at that time it was in the Second Shinobi World War. Under this situation of internal and external troubles, Sandaime-sama took over with Leaf and brought with Leaf back to the peak. In the era where the protagonist is now, Sandaime-sama is at the peak, the White Fang Sannin is also famous, and the patriarchs of the major clans have also grown up. It can be said that it is the best era. Although Konoha's subsequent decline is also a fact, but looking at history, it can be said that it is very rare to have a wise ruler in power for a period of time, and there are too few leaders who cannot make mistakes when they are old, so I said that Sandaime is at least qualified as a Kage. Chapter 9. No, you can't touch there. If you keep doing this, I'm really going to get angry. Seeing that little son had turned into a little pufferfish, the group of wolf-like young nurses finally withdrew their evil hands in embarrassment. Garashi sighed and rubbed his cheeks. He really did not pretend to be angry, but because his soft and smooth face was really about to be pinched and swollen. In a sense, the reason he became an otaku in his previous life was inseparable from these scary women. Wasn't it just that he was a little cute? Was it necessary to stroke him like a cat or a dog? So I'd better not think about it. Although it's superficial, I'm still the beneficiary of this superficial model. Perhaps it was because of the quantum entanglement of the two spacetimes, his current appearance was not much different from when he was a child in his previous life. Therefore, he could already foresee more trouble after his cuteness turned into handsomeness. Of course, this kind of trouble could also turn into a hidden resource under certain circumstances. For example, living off a woman. Little Garashi, aren't you in school now? Why do you still have time to come to the hospital? Hee, little Garashi, do you miss your sisters? Sigh, without little Shushi to rub my shoulders, there's nothing to look forward to in these boring days. Although they no longer touched him, these young nurses still launched a sharp verbal attack. Seeing that Garashi's little face was red, the oldest head nurse stood up and said, Okay, is it that you're not busy enough with your work at hand or that you're not taking care of enough patients? Tell me, I'll make arrangements for you. Although she was the oldest, she was actually only around 30 years old. However, compared to these young nurses who were 16 or 17 years old, she was indeed a senior. Hearing her words, the surrounding young nurses instantly dispersed. Even if it was not wartime, the special nature of ninjas meant that they were destined to not be too stable. Therefore, Woodleaf Hospital had always been overloaded. Otherwise, they wouldn't have accepted a child laborer like Garashi. Of course, this was also because Garashi did a good job. In terms of internal affairs, he alone could free up 3 people's manpower for the hospital. At this moment, the head nurse, Yayoi, pressed her hands on her knees, bent her waist and narrowed her eyes as she asked Garashi, Garashi, did you encounter any difficulties in school? The few young ladies who were willing to work overtime to stay were also nervous. Could it be that little Garashi was bullied? They also graduated from the ninja academy. Of course, they knew the unspoken rules of the school: big family, commoner, orphan. Damn it, if anyone dares to bully you, I will definitely not let them off. That's right. That bastard better pray that he never comes to the hospital. When they thought that Garashi might be bullied, they couldn't wait to go back to school, block the school gate, and beat up those who dared to bully Garashi. Yumiko-san, Misa-san, Kotoko-san, and Yayoi-san, thank you. Garashi's heart was filled with warmth. Although he was more rational than emotional in this world, there were still fetters that he recognized. Actually, I'm doing very well in school. My classmates are also very united. By the way, I'm now the class monitor and I've made a lot of new friends. Wow, little Garashi is really amazing. Phew, that's good. Hey, if Keiho-san knew, she would be very happy. Oh, sorry? Misa-san, you don't have to apologize. Besides, you're not wrong. Garashi's expression was calm, but there was some longing in his eyes. I'm doing very well now. If my mother knew, she would be very happy. Seeing that Garashi didn't seem to be faking it, the others sighed in relief. Of course, they didn't care about Garashi for such superficial reasons. Garashi's mother used to be a member of Woodleaf's medical class. She was also Yayoi's close friend and Yumiko's tutor. They were the most precious treasures left behind by Garashi's parents, and had helped him through the most difficult period of his life. Of course, Garashi himself was also a bonus. An obedient and sensible child was much more likable than those naughty children. By the way, Shushi, did you come here today to share this good news with us? Midai asked with a smile. Clearly he was very happy. You can say that. In addition to reassuring Aunt Yayoi, I also have 2 things to say. Garashi said with a serious expression. Say it, we're listening. The eyes of the 3 lit up. Garashi's tense expression was really too cute. Even Yayoi's hands were itching to move. She had never had much resistance to this kind of contrast. Garashi didn't seem to realize the approaching danger, and said seriously, the first thing is that I want to explain the situation to Yanai-sama. In the future, I can only come to the hospital to help on weekends. As he said that, Garashi's expression became a bit nervous. It's okay even if you don't have the money as long as you don't make me leave. That's it. Yayoi couldn't help but laugh. Little Garashi, this time you've underestimated your role. These days when you weren't here, the hospital's drug management and hospital bed turnover were almost paralyzed. Every day the class leader and the others were worried about whether to bring you back for a few more days. Kotoko nodded again and again. Without the process you set, our work is too troublesome. Misa complained, Kazumi's work schedule is too bad. I don't know how I survive these days. Yumiko smiled and joked, Shingon and the others were so happy to see you. They were not just looking forward to your massage. Then I'll go and take a look. Garashi calmly said, in fact the process is very simple. First, we need to understand everyone's living habits and try to eliminate the interference of time factors. Second, we need to estimate everyone's chakra amount and chakra recovery speed. This way we can achieve the highest efficiency and finally... Yayoi couldn't help but ask, Garashi, where did you get this information? Garashi puzzled, isn't this something that can be known by observation? Looking at Garashi's matter-of-fact appearance, Yumiko and the other 2 let out a slackers. No, a normal person's sorrowful cry. Can this kind of thing be done by a normal person? Ahem. Misa awkwardly but politely smiled, I seem to know why Kazumi is so aggrieved. Is this the domain of geniuses? Yayoi sighed and immediately smiled, but this is also good. At least, Garashi's importance can't be replaced. Well, Garashi, what's the second thing you want to say? Hearing this, Garashi sternly said, Aunt Yayoi, I want you to teach me medical ninjutsu. Chapter 10. Medical ninjutsu? Yayoi was startled and immediately refused with a smile. It's still too early for you. Yumiko smiled and said, it's really rare to see Garashi who is as calm as a little adult. Yayoi-san didn't teach you ninjutsu for your own good. Only by having a solid foundation can you go further on the road of ninja. Misa also nodded, the most important thing for you now is to learn how to refine chakra, and then try to improve your control of chakra to the point where you can learn medical ninjutsu before graduation. Strengthen my control of chakra? Garashi stretched out his right hand and thin lines danced on his fingertips, weaving a pattern of wood leaf forehead protector in front of the 4 people. Then Garashi asked with a dignified expression with some expectation, is this okay? The 4 people opposite him looked as if they had seen a ghost. Yumiko said to herself in a daze, I must be dreaming, I must be. Kotoko looked as if she had been played with, she tilted her head and said, oh, I still can't control chakra to this extent. Yayoi was stunned for a moment, then suddenly turned back and asked, did you teach little Garashi how to refine chakra? Her voice was very harsh, obviously annoyed by the 3 people's nonsense. They were only in the middle and lower class of the ninja world, and they didn't have a clear idea of when they could start refining chakra. They were also worried that their careless guidance would harm Garashi, so they chose to believe in authority and let the ninja school teach them uniformly. Garashi quickly said, Aunt Yayoi, the method of refining chakra was taught to me by the ninja school teacher yesterday. Yayoi listened and asked with some disbelief, in other words, it only took you 2 days to learn how to refine chakra? Actually, it was only 1 day. I seem to have refined chakra on the 16th day. Misa touched her delicate chin with her fingertips and couldn't help but look to the side and asked, Kotoko, how many days did it take you? I took 17 days, Yumiko's talent should be the best among us, it only took 14 days. Kotoko said, little Shushi is amazing. Maybe he will become a big shot in the future. Yumiko said excitedly after she came back to her senses. At this time, Garashi explained, in fact I'm not that great, it's mostly thanks to Asuma-san. Asuma? Yes, he is the son of the third generation Yuan Fei Asuma. So he is the son of the third generation. No wonder. Shushi, you've made some great friends. After hearing that the other party was Sandame's son, their doubts disappeared in an instant. When Sandame Naruto died in battle, Sandame took over from Naruto and led Woodleaf to win the war, creating the heyday of Woodleaf. He himself is known to be proficient in 5 types of chakra ninjutsu, and has the title of ninjutsu professor. Therefore, Sandame's reputation in Woodleaf can be said to be like the sun in the sky. In the eyes of Yayoi and the others, he is almost like a god. Even if he is only the son of Sandame Naruto, they think that it is natural for him to do this kind of thing. Garashi struck while the iron was hot. This is also the suggestion that Asuma-san gave me. He has learned more than one ninjutsu. He thinks that people like us who follow the rules will only waste our talent. Yayoi nodded again and again. The son of Sandame must have been taught by Sandame himself. In other words, this is the evaluation of Sandame. Well, geniuses are used to break the rules. Our little Garashi is a real genius. Oh, then we have to hurry up and teach little Garashi ninjutsu. Otherwise, little Garashi will fall too far behind other people. This is also the reason why Garashi set himself up as a genius. In the world of ninjas, people are always tolerant of geniuses. If Garashi's performance is mediocre, no matter how he begs, Yayoi will not teach him ninjutsu, because step by step is the best protection for beginners. But if he is a genius, then no matter what he does, it is understandable because they don't understand the world of geniuses, so they will take all this for granted, especially when Garashi's talent is beyond their knowledge. Now they are beginning to worry that they have mastered too few ninjutsu. Maybe they will drag down Garashi's talent. Let's count the C-class and below medical ninjutsu. See what you have learned but I haven't learned yet. Yayoi said with a serious face. I'll go first. Apart from the most basic healing spells, I also know hemostasis, blood creation, silence and healing connection, Mesa said as she counted with her fingers. I am similar to you, the main thing is that I have purification. I also have tranquility, it can calm people who are attacked by genjutsu. In Woodleaf, in addition to the ninjutsu developed by the caster himself and the secret ninjutsu of the family, only ninjutsu below B-class can be privately taught. Although B-class ninjutsu have almost no sense of existence in the later stages, in fact, B-class ninjutsu can be regarded as the trump card of ordinary chunin. Even for some Tokubetsu Jonin, B-class ninjutsu is still their main means of combat. In a sense, B-class and above ninjutsu can be regarded as the strategic resource reserve of a ninja village. Once it is leaked, it is likely to mean the weakening of their own military power and the strengthening of the enemy ninja village. Therefore, when Yayoi and the others learn this advanced ninjutsu, they have to set a seal at the same time to ensure that the village's ninjutsu will not be leaked. After counting, Kitoko said with a bitter face, Huh? None of us know offensive medical ninjutsu. Yumiko looked nervous. We medical ninjutsu have never been good at fighting, but little Garashi is the class leader, he will definitely be challenged by others in the future. Yayoi also frowned and said, although my chakra scalpel can be used as an attack, it is only effective in close combat. Seeing several people frowning, Garashi hurriedly said, Aunt Yayoi, as long as you can teach me the most basic healing ninjutsu, it will be enough. Healing ninjutsu? Yayoi frowned, this is just a D-class ninjutsu, it is a waste of your talent to choose this. This is not a graduation gift, don't be too nervous. Garashi was a little helpless, he seems to have underestimated the impact of this news on Aunt Yayoi and the others. Midai was taken aback at first, but then he shook his head and sighed. I was just saying that you weren't mature enough, but now it seems that I'm the most impatient one. When I heard you say that, I immediately thought of the graduation gift. Shushi smiled. Doesn't this mean that you're more concerned about me than yourself, Auntie Midai? You? Yayoi smiled half gently and half helplessly. Sometimes, you are so mature that it makes people feel distressed. Garashi smiled and did not speak. Yayoi shook her head and walked in the direction of the infirmary. Let's go, I will give you a demonstration now. P.S. Graduation gift is one of the 2 things I added. I will mention it here first, there will be a detailed explanation later. It is mainly to explain why those big families let their family members enter the ninja school to study, and why the second generation developed so many forbidden ninjutsu. Chapter 11. Along the way, the nurses they met all greeted them warmly. When they arrived at the infirmary, Garashi's hair was already a mess. Yayoi, senpai, is there anything I can help you with? Seeing them, the nurse on duty walked up,
but at the same time, her gaze drifted to Garashi, who was standing behind Yayoi. "I'm looking for Captain Nanoyu," Yayoi said concisely. Oh, Captain Nanoyu is right in front, I'll bring you there." The infirmary wasn't very big and they reached it after a few steps. Then, the nurse received her payment without any qualms. Hee, little Garashi's touch is really super awesome. After a round of ravaging, she finally left satisfied. At this time, Nanoyu also noticed them. "Yayoi, what's the matter?" She wasn't very old, only around 20 years old, but her medical skills had already surpassed most people, so Yayoi and the others were very respectful to her. Hearing her ask, Yayoi told her about Garashi's worries. Nanoyu was startled and looked at Garashi with a gentle smile. "Little Garashi is still as gentle as before. You know about the hospital's predicament, so you took the initiative to make this request, right?" Garashi tilted his head and pretended to be a student of the Grim Reaper. I don't understand what you mean, Sister Nanoyu." It's because of his own experience that he developed the habit of not causing trouble for others as much as possible. But how many of those children with similar experiences can be as mature as Garashi? Maybe I can give those sensitive children a home. Nanoyu looked at Garashi in a daze, a thought quietly growing in her heart. Meisha and the others also came to a realization, looking at Garashi with eyes full of love and pride. Compared to their little brother at home, Garashi was really too easy to worry about. "By the way, Captain, there's one more thing." Yayoi didn't think that Yinayu would refuse, so she didn't think too much about it. "Can you arrange a patient for me who needs healing?" "That's not a problem at all." Yinayu immediately agreed and asked with some doubt, "But why did you suddenly ask for this?" Yayoi narrowed her eyes and smiled. "I'm going to demonstrate the details of the healing spell to Garashi." "Healing spell?" Garashi should have seen it many times. Nanoyu's expression changed. "You want to teach Garashi ninjutsu?" Yayoi smiled and nodded. To be able to become the medical class monitor at the age of 20, Nanoyu's intelligence was naturally extremely high. He instantly figured out the crux of the matter. Garashi has already learned how to refine chakra? And he is very talented in controlling chakra? Actually, it's mainly because Naruto-sama's son helped Garashi. Although she said so, Yayoi couldn't hide the pride on her face. So it's because of Naruto-sama? As a former elite of Root, she thought far more than Yayoi. However, this was also the main reason why Garashi pulled Asuma out as a shield. Although he wasn't sure if Danzo would be interested in him, it wasn't wrong to label him as a member of Naruto's faction in advance. Room 47. A ninja with 3 long and narrow scratches on his shoulder was lying on the hospital bed. "Were you scratched by a wild beast?" Yayoi glanced at him and asked. The ninja on the hospital bed was a little embarrassed. "I encountered an accident while carrying out a decoff mission." Misa and the others slightly twitched the corner of their mouth. Carrying out a mission sounded very serious, but if it was a D-class mission, then it was completely different. In a sense, he was indeed a genius if he could encounter an accident while carrying out a mission that required him to pick up trash. Of course, as kind medical staff, they wouldn't point it out directly, lest the patient refused to cooperate out of shame. Yayoi stepped forward and a light green light flashed in her palm. "Garashi, I know you have seen us use healing techniques many times, but that's when you don't have chakra. Now use your chakra to sense it and tell me what's the difference between our chakra." Okay. Garashi's face was serious as he stretched out his right hand and created a ball of chakra, then merged his chakra with Aunt Yayoi's chakra. Closing his eyes, he sensed the difference between the two. "This is the aura of vitality?" Garashi suddenly opened his eyes. He was keenly aware that his chakra seemed to be lacking something compared to Aunt Yayoi's chakra. "You actually understood it so quickly." Yayoi was surprised, but more than that, she was happy and gratified. "Although it may be too early to tell you this, but to become a medical ninja, you must first understand the essence of medical ninjutsu." With that, Yayoi put her hands on the injured part of the patient, and under the soft light of chakra, 3 terrible wounds of 10 centimeters long began to slowly heal. Taking advantage of the time when chakra was working, Yayoi asked again. "Garashi, did you see it clearly? It's a change?" Garashi pondered for a moment and said seriously, "Chakra itself has no attributes, but just like fire release and wind release, it can produce a corresponding nature change after being given an attribute, and our medical ninjutsu should also be a kind of release with an attribute, right?" The ninja lying on the hospital bed couldn't help but ask, "Ninja school has begun to teach you the nature change?" Garashi shook his head. "I went to the library to look for information today and combined it with theory. I guessed it myself."
The ninja who didn't deserve to be named looked at him blankly. He looked at Misa and the others again and saw that they were all taking it for granted, and he couldn't help but fall into a state of doubt. I'm a genin, am I a fake? Yayoi didn't care, a tool that doesn't cause trouble is a good tool. In addition to the 5 basic attributes of release and bloodline limit, there are actually 2 types of release, yang release and yin release. Garashi thoughtfully said, so, the essence of medical ninjutsu is yang release? Misa and the others quietly pricked up their ears, it was the first time they heard this. Yayoi nodded slightly, the attribute of life from the body is yang release, and in addition to medical ninjutsu, yang release actually includes some secret ninjutsu, such as the Akimichi clan's multiple transformation jutsu. Misa and the others felt that their fantasy was shattered. The meatball ninjutsu used by the Akimichi clan and the medical ninjutsu they used were essentially the same. They wouldn't become fat people like the Akimichi clan in the future, would they? Thinking of that terrible scene, they instinctively shuddered. Aunt Yayoi, I have one more question. Go ahead. Each of us has our own attributes of the 5 elements, and only after using chakra paper to test the chakra attribute can we begin to change the nature of the corresponding attribute. However, I don't think I've ever seen a test about yin and yang attributes, so how do you determine whether a person is qualified to practice medical ninjutsu or genjutsu? The 3 nodded subconsciously. The 3 major systems of ninjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu, although most ninjas choose to specialize in one of them, it's not like they don't have the qualifications to practice the other 2, right? Yayoi blinked. This question seemed to have entered her knowledge blind spot. After a moment of contemplation, she said with uncertainty, in the village, the recommendation is generally made by the team leader Chunin or Jonin, but I'm not very clear about the specific process. However, Garashi, you don't have to worry too much, Aunt believes that you must have talent in this area. Garashi nodded and no longer asked. He had some guesses about yang release and yin release, but it was unlikely that he would be able to get more information from Aunt Midai. After all, the strongest among them, Aunt Yayoi, is just a Chunin. What they know is not necessarily the truth of this world. Chapter 12. Medical ninjutsu can't heal injuries too quickly. Even the advanced medical ninjutsu, immortal palm technique, takes at least 5 minutes to treat such a large-scale scratch, for a normal medical ninja. Therefore, during this free time, Yayoi continued to explain, medical ninjutsu uses hand seals to make the body energy and chakra active, and then let this part of chakra flow in the body according to a specific combination and release it. Garashi said according to his own understanding, can you explain it this way? Chakra is a known number, ninjutsu is a formula, and hand seals are auxiliary calculation tools. The more powerful the ninjutsu, the more complicated the formula is, and the more hand seals are auxiliary calculation tools. The final result is the ninjutsu we need to release. It was the first time Yayoi heard such a novel explanation. She subconsciously felt that Garashi's words were very reasonable, but ninjas don't pay attention to basic teaching, so she was a little uncertain. Why do you think so? Garashi said seriously, today I read Introduction to Chakra, Ninjutsu Encyclopedia, Essence of Ninjutsu, and many other books in the library, but they all said that the 3 keys to using ninjutsu are to have enough chakra, the correct hand seals, and a complete ninjutsu style. Misa on the side was puzzled, what's wrong with that? But I heard that Naruto, the founder of the Woodleaf clan, can heal injuries without hand seals. Garashi said in a deep voice, that is to say, the process of hand seals can be omitted, right? In Garashi's view, if hand seals are a calculation tool, then Hashirama is a master of mental arithmetic, and he can directly skip the tedious process in the middle. It seems that you have also noticed the effect of hand seals on medical ninjutsu. Yayoi sighed, every second we spend in the process of hand seals may be transferred to the injured person as a price, so every medical ninja must spend a lot of time practicing hand seals. However, even Tsunade-sama can't heal injuries without hand seals, so don't think too much about it and don't neglect the practice of hand seals. Garashi nodded vigorously, I will. His vision is very long-term, but it's not that he wants to surpass others without trying to understand. This kind of person can't go far. Seeing that Garashi didn't have the self-paranoia of ordinary geniuses, Yayoi was also relieved, and then she continued to explain, medical ninjutsu and genjutsu are much more difficult than ordinary ninjutsu because of the control of chakra. Generally, ninjutsu only use hand seals to mobilize chakra, but medical ninjutsu is different, it needs to precisely control to controls to control.
Kotoko raised her small hand and asked, Mia-senpai, why don't we directly mobilize our body's energy when we use medical ninjutsu? You're a ninja, don't you even know the most basic knowledge? Yayoi replied in a bad mood, physical energy and spiritual energy are more of a concept. Only when the two are integrated into chakra can it be considered a real entity. To achieve the situation you said, unless someone's physical energy is strong enough to the point of materialization, but how is this possible? Kotoko shrunk her head, her mind was full of formulas and tools, and for a moment she didn't react. Garashi held his chin with his small hand, secretly thinking, most people use non-elemental chakra and change their nature to use ninjutsu. The reason why senjutsu is powerful is because the nature of chakra has changed. Is the source of Naruto's strength related to the nature of chakra? At night in Garashi's cabin, Shushi sat in front of the table holding a small knife. He carefully made a shallow cut on the back of his left hand. His hands quickly formed a seal, and then, his right hand with a light green light on the back of his left hand. It's a little itchy and painful, it should be the accelerated growth of the granulation tissue, and the slow recovery of the nerve endings. 1 minute? Even if it's only a small wound of this degree, 1 minute is already my limit. Garashi whispered, carefully collecting the feedback of his body. This is not to say that Garashi is so kind that he would rather hurt himself than catch a few small animals to do experiments, he just did this because only his own body can get the most real feedback. If the experience gained by simply using ninjutsu is 1, and the experience gained by conducting experiments is 3, then the experience gained by Garashi from his own body is 10. In the case that the amount of chakra he can refine in a day is limited, this is the best way to improve the proficiency. Moreover, Garashi also needs to figure out his tolerance to pain, and the precise recovery time when he uses medical ninjutsu. As a medical ninja, he must ensure that his physical condition is under absolute control at all times. Only in this way can I accurately control myself in the battle half a month later, what degree of injury I receive. In this way, Garashi seriously attends classes during the day, spends the afternoon in the library, squeezes Asma's remaining value after school, self-harms at night at home, and goes to the hospital for an internship on weekends. During this period, although there are some occasional episodes of youth budding, they are easily handled by Garashi, and then he puts all his energy into this incomparably fulfilling study life. Soon half a month flashed by. Ding ding ding. When the bell rang on time, there was a sudden burst of cheers in the classroom, and then almost everyone turned their eyes to the two protagonists of today. Because it is a private duel, in order not to occupy public time, Garashi deliberately arranged to have it after school today. Garashi, you must win. Class leader, it's up to you. Asma. Well, it's nothing, I called you wrong. Everyone around is cheering for the two people. Although Asma doesn't care much about other people's opinions, he can't help but feel a burst of jealousy in his heart. At this time, Asma-san, hearing this sudden voice, Asma's spirit was lifted. It seems that he still has supporters. Looking in the direction of the voice, the girls in the class seemed to form a united front and shouted at him. If you dare to win against Garashi-san, we won't let you go. You can't say that, Garashi-san will be angry, but if you dare to hurt Garashi-san, humph. Oh, don't say any more, if you continue Asma-san will cry. In fact, they don't have much malice to Asma. Since Asma and Garashi became friends, their view of Asma has changed a lot. How can a person who can become friends with Garashi-san be a bad person? Of course, the warning is also true. Chapter 13. Asma also understood this, but he still felt wronged. He looked at Garashi with eyes full of resentment. Only then did he realize that Garashi was still sitting calmly in his seat, reading. Seeing this, Asma could not help but step forward and ask angrily, our battle is about to begin and you're still reading here. At least give me a nervous reaction. Garashi closed the book helplessly. It's because you're too strong, Asma, that I have to seize every moment to improve myself. Is that so? Actually, I'm not that strong. Asma laughed complacently, then asked, but what's the use of reading? Besides, you can't remember it in time. Garashi looked puzzled. Why can't I remember it in time? Asma's mouth twitched. Can you remember the contents of the book after reading it once? Yes. Isn't that normal for people like us? Garashi nodded, then tilted his head and asked, can't you do it, Asma? Although he had already given Asma a lot of psychological cues, this time it was real. As a genius in the eyes of ordinary people, he had the gift of photographic memory in his previous life. It was also because of this gift that he could still remember all the details of this world in his heart, even though he had transmigrated for a few years. Asma subconsciously opened his mouth wide, his throat dry. He really could not do it. Could it be that I'm actually not a genius? Thinking of this, Asma's eyes could not help but moisten. Seeing that Asma was beginning to doubt his life, Garashi smiled and walked outside. Let's go, I've been looking forward to fighting with you for a long time, Asma. Asma nodded and followed with heavy steps. On the school field, there were already many teachers and senior students waiting here. Although in the eyes of most people, this was just a farce between children after all, it involved Sir Naruto's son, so they were still somewhat interested. What a bunch of noisy brats. We weren't so childish back then. Hey, you're only 6 years old. Why do you sound so mature? Cough cough. There's a newcomer watching from the side. Don't damage my dignity as a senior. Not only were the students whispering, but the teachers of each grade were also whispering. TSK. When did the battle between two freshmen attract so many people? I hope this battle won't be too ugly. What's so interesting about a battle between two newbies? Spitting at each other? At best it's just chakra's saliva. Generally speaking, being able to learn how to refine chakra in half a month is already not bad. But don't forget that Asma is the son of Lord Naruto. That's right, geniuses can break the rules. 8 gods don't play dead. You're their teacher, so you should know their progress better than anyone else. The 8 gods smiled. Asma is indeed a genius. When he entered the academy, he was already proficient in using the 3-body jutsu. Now, maybe he has already learned more than 1 D-class ninjutsu. Are you kidding? Doesn't that mean that he's already reached the graduation standard? Don't talk nonsense. A ninja doesn't just know how to use the 3-body jutsu. Technique and experience are also very important. However, this kind of talent is really amazing. He's worthy of being Naruto-sama's son. It seems that our Woodleaf Academy will have another genius like Orochimaru. At this moment, a hearty laughter came from behind them. Ah, don't flatter him. Compared with Orochimaru, he's still far behind. Everyone turned around and found that the person who came was none other than Sandame Naruto. Fire Naruto-sama. You're here too. Sandame waved his hand and smiled. I'm not here today as Naruto. You can treat me as an ordinary student. That being said, the teacher standing next to Sandame still felt a burst of pressure. Fortunately, Garashi appeared and walked into the field at the right time. Sandame's attention was diverted, and the pressure on them was finally reduced a lot. Garashi, I know you're strong. In this school, only you are worthy of being my opponent. Asuma's expression was serious as he roared, Come, let's show these people our strength. Everyone shuddered violently. What was with this feeling of shame that had nowhere to go? Many teachers quietly looked at Sandame. Children often imitate their parents' behavior. Could it be that Naruto-sama is actually like this at home? Sandame's right hand holding the pipe stiffened, and he began to doubt whether it was right for him to come here today. Garashi made the seal of opposition with both hands and said with a firm look, Asma-san, I'm going to start. Asma also made the seal of opposition. Come on. As soon as he finished speaking, Asuma leaned forward with his arms straight behind him, charging toward the opposite side in a short-distance dash. Shushi, on the other hand, quickly retreated backward. His right hand pulled out 4 shurikens from the tool bag at his waist and held them between his fingers. His eyes were focused on Asuma's feet, anticipating his next move. Whoosh. 4 shurikens shot out, piercing the air, and shot toward Asma's shoulders and ankles. Asma's rushing figure paused and he forced himself to jump to the left. But before he could relax, he was startled by the sudden sound of something breaking through the air. Looking out of the corner of his eye, he saw 4 more shurikens shooting toward him. It felt as if he was the one who took the initiative to deliver them. He actually predicted my movements in advance, this throwing technique, worthy of Garashi. Asma sighed in his heart. Obviously his physical strength and chakra are above Garashi, but he was the one who was in danger first. However, this level of throwing technique is not a ninjutsu. Let me show you how to use ninjutsu. Asma didn't dodge and directly faced the shurikens. Bang! Ding 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 ding. A burst of smoke filled the air, and Asma's original position was replaced by a piece of gravel. Asma, who just fell to the ground, accelerated forward without hesitation, and some of his eyes were focused on Garashi's waist. The shurikens in the tool bag should be used up. What are you going to do next, Garashi? You can use the substitution technique so skillfully, that's amazing. Wait, be careful. Hearing the screams around him, Asuma subconsciously looked back, and a flash of cold light skyrocketed in his line of sight. This is... Asuma's pupil violently shrank, too late to make hand seals, he could only hurriedly roll to the side. Three-body technique is not without hand seals. I specifically checked. When Sakura fought Sark, she also needed hand seals to use the substitution technique, but he was still a step late. The cold light took away a few drops of blood from his cheek. Asuma didn't have time to care about the faint tingling on his cheek, but looked at the opposite side with surprise. In front of him, Garashi stood quietly, raised his right hand, and 4 shurikens were flying around him. Between the shurikens and the fingertips, there was an almost transparent chakra line connecting them together. Chapter 14. This is chakra thread? He actually used the puppeteer's technique on a ninja tool. His control of chakra has reached such a level? Ordinary puppeteers can't do this. Indeed, under the condition of ensuring the speed of the shuriken and not being discovered by Asuma, this requires extremely high control of chakra. Everyone was very surprised. Regardless of whether it was Shushi's throwing technique that seemed to be able to predict the future or Asuma's substitution technique that was as smooth as flowing water, they had all displayed amazing skills that far surpassed the newcomers and even the seniors. If these were still within the acceptable range of everyone, then the ability shown by Garashi now is shocking. Purely from the difficulty of controlling chakra, this technique is not inferior to a C-class ninjutsu. I lost. If I didn't hear their voices, I would have lost the ability to fight. Asuma wiped the blood on his face with the back of his hand, his voice was weak. Listening to Asuma's words, many people around showed an embarrassed look. Naruto-sama didn't say anything. Obviously, he believed in Garashi's control ability. Their subconscious actions destroyed Garashi's plan. Don't worry about it, the influence of external factors is originally a part of the battle. Besides, what is a battle without variables and accidents? Garashi smiled slightly. He didn't lose his composure because of the external influence. Asuma took a deep breath and no longer hesitated. I understand, only a battle with all my strength is the greatest respect to you. Almost at the moment his voice fell, Asuma rushed towards Garashi. At the same time, the shuriken hovering around Garashi's body fiercely shot out. The number of shuriken was not many, but under Garashi's control, it evolved into a storm-like momentum. Asuma didn't dare to dodge, and it was impossible to dodge, even if his stamina and chakra were above Garashi. Once he was caught in a situation of constant pursuit, only defeat awaited him. He could only fight hard. Asuma held the chakra with both hands and waved in front of him again and again, bouncing the shuriken away. Ding 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 hiss. Although Asuma's movements were very fast, Shushi's angle of attack was too good. If he wasn't in Asuma's blind spot, he was attacking from 2 opposite directions at the same time. Asuma was tired of parrying, but halfway, his body was cut several times by the shuriken. But he didn't retreat, instead he rushed more and more aggressively. He didn't use substitution jutsu. Does he want to use chakra in a more critical place? Garashi's eyes narrowed slightly, and he didn't use the guerrilla tactics of kiting, but took out a kunai from the tool bag with his right hand and made a defensive posture. He was not confused by the illusion in front of him. He could take the advantage at the moment because Asuma was inexperienced and was caught off guard by his novel fighting style. But once the opponent was prepared, the disadvantage of this fighting style was highlighted, that is, the lack of power. After all, shuriken was controlled by chakra, and it was difficult to maintain the initial kinetic energy at the beginning. Therefore, even though Asuma had been slashed several times by the shuriken, he was still able to charge forward energetically. Garashi was very clear that with his body without adequate nutrition, if he entered the guerrilla phase, he was likely to be worn down by the opponent. I must continue to put psychological pressure on him. Although he has entered the declining stage, Garashi not only did not retreat, but deliberately pretended to be victorious, standing in the same place waiting for Asuma's attack. Asuma has been implanted by Garashi these days that his enemy is almost omnipotent, from refining chakra to photographic memory, and then to all-round suppression on the battlefield. He has been constantly consolidating this perception. Therefore, when Asuma saw Garashi's posture, he subconsciously thought that he was seen through, and couldn't help but launch the prepared ninjutsu in advance. Clone Jutsu. Bang! 3 Asuma surrounded Garashi at the same time. The clone jutsu's clones did not have a physical body, but Asuma had chosen to use the shuriken right after the first round of attacks. This way shuriken could not use the shuriken to test which one was the real one. However, Garashi didn't hesitate at all, his eyes were firm,
and he directly stabbed Asma on the left with the kunai in his hand. His perception is strong, not to mention he has been paying close attention to Asma's every move after seeing through his thoughts. What? How can it be so fast? Asma was shocked and hurriedly raised his hand to block. But how can Garashi's attack be so easy to block? Kunai is like a snake, wrapping Asma's arm and poking his shoulder. I can only fight. Although he doesn't have much actual combat experience, Asma has been taught by special jonin after all, and he knows that it is even more impossible to retreat now. He grabbed Chakra without any defense and slashed forward. Teared Asuma's left shoulder was punctured and blood gushed out. Rinstone, who had the upper hand, only managed to inflict a shallow wound on his chest, but the disadvantage of his physique made him look very pale. Seeing this situation, the 8 gods asked with some uneasiness. Naruto, Sama, do you want to stop them? The Sandaime gently raised his palm. Since you chose this path, you should be prepared to bleed, and even die in battle. And the Sandaime said with a playful look in his eyes. And what? The 8 gods asked puzzledly. Oh, let's see, this battle may be more interesting than you think. In the field, after a slight pause, the two rushed at each other fiercely again. Asma suppressed him with his physical advantage, while Garashi manipulated shuriken to harass the opponent while looking for the right time to grab kunai to attack quickly. In just a few rounds, the blood on the two of them increased several times. However, neither of them showed any abnormality, and they looked directly at each other as if the injured person wasn't them. The expressions of the people around them also became dignified, not to mention the amazing strength shown by the two of them. Just their endurance of pain is enough to make people look at them. However, the balance of the battle still tilted to Asma's side. Everyone knew in their hearts, but they didn't underestimate Garashi because of this. On the contrary, they valued him more and more. For ninjas who don't specialize in taijutsu, winning by physical strength is not something to boast about. Not to mention, Garashi is at a disadvantage in physical strength because of malnutrition. In their view, Garashi, who showed amazing combat skills and chakra control skills, is the real winner of this battle. But just when everyone thought that the battle was about to end, Garashi suddenly bit the kunai in his mouth, and then his hands quickly formed seals, and in less than a second he completed the ninjutsu. So fast. This thought suddenly flashed in everyone's heart. Although Garashi didn't make many seals, but he can control the time in less than a second, which is still impossible for most people to do. But what's the use of using ninjutsu now? They thought so, and then they saw Garashi, who put his right hand on the wound. His face became ruddy at a speed visible to the naked eye, and even the wound on his chest was quickly healing. This is healing technique? Not to mention healing technique, even immortal palm technique can't have this effect. Not to mention the students, even the teachers couldn't understand. Naruto, Sama, what is this? Sandaime Sama smiled slightly. Don't doubt your eyes, this is healing technique. But how can healing technique have this effect? You call yourself a teacher. Sandaime Sama shook his head and laughed. Can't you even see the true state of the students? Chapter 15. True State. Ayagami was surprised and hurriedly asked, is Garashi not injured? It's not that he's not injured, but the degree of injury is far less serious than what you see. Sandaime looked at Garashi with eyes full of appreciation. To be precise, he's taking the initiative to get injured. Those injuries look serious, but in fact they won't have much impact on the battle. This kind of thing can be done? Of course, but the premise is... Sandaime was in a good mood and couldn't help but take out his pipe and smoke. You have to know your own body well. There's also one more thing, that is, he's using healing techniques to the extreme. Even if I use healing techniques, I may not be able to do it better than him. P.S. In addition to 10, even if Tsinghua University professor came, he may not be able to calculate it faster than me. The people around couldn't help but widen their eyes. Although Naruto, Sama isn't a specialized medical ninja, but as a famous ninjutsu professor, his attainments in medical ninjutsu have actually exceeded most medical ninjas. Sandaime's original setting was a ninjutsu professor proficient in 5 attributes, but later added the setting to 7 attributes. Being able to make him say such a thing is enough to show Garashi's talent in medical ninjutsu. After sighing, some people still didn't understand, but what's the point of doing this? No matter how he hides it, his strength won't increase at all. Sandaime blew out a smoke ring. It's not as simple as you think. Asma should be very clear about the effect of medical ninjutsu, but now he's impatient. Everyone was shocked.
Only then did they notice that Asma was sweating profusely in the battle. Not only was his breathing rapid, but even his footsteps were a lot disorderly. Is this psychological warfare? It's true, he really recovered. After several collisions, Asma confirmed the answer he saw. On the other side, Garashi didn't use words to provoke Asma, but his eyes were firm, and he attacked Asma without saying a word. But the more he acted like this, the more Asma believed that Garashi was unfathomable. Doppelganger technique. Under Garashi's immense pressure, his doppelganger technique had a breakthrough and the number of doppelgangers increased by 1. However, it was still useless. Doppelgangers without a physical body could not interfere with Garashi's judgment at all. They were just wasting chakra in vain. And Garashi seemed to have been exposed by his medical ninjutsu, so he no longer stayed in a stalemate and switched to the same violent style as Asma. Not long after, his body was covered in wounds. Then, under Asma's crumbling gaze, Garashi once again placed his left hand on his chest, and the seemingly serious injury quickly healed. This again. Too strong. Is this Garashi's true strength? Looking at Garashi's calm demeanor, Asma's chest rose and fell, and even his hands holding chakra trembled slightly. Although he had the upper hand before, the rhythm of the battle had always been in his opponent's hands. In addition, Shushi's expression did not change at all from the beginning to the end, which made him feel that he could not figure out what was going on. All kinds of intricate factors combined together caused Asma's psychological defense to gradually collapse, and the psychological cues that Garashi planted before the battle continued to take root and germinate. In the end, his mentality was completely unbalanced. Alas, Asma is going to lose. Well, his rhythm has been completely disrupted. It's really that Garashi is too strong. It should be that he's too shameless, there's no way to fight at all. There are not many people who can see Garashi's true strength. Seeing Asma's attacks become more and more disorganized, the people around him made a judgment about this battle. Asma also noticed his own problem, but it was useless. The more he wanted to calm down, the more impatient he became, and when his thoughts were in chaos, he added more wounds to his body. Calm down for me. Asma's breathing was rapid and he fiercely bit the tip of his tongue. The key to this battle is Garashi's medical ninjutsu, but his hand seals are too fast, I can't interrupt it, so I can only find a way to make his medical ninjutsu ineffective. That is to say, I have to use attacks that exceed the upper limit to make Garashi directly lose the ability to fight. Although I'm not proficient enough in this technique, I can only try my best. Asma approached his opponent while his hands were forming hand seals. Shin, Hai, Wu-in Great Fireball Jutsu. This is a C-class ninjutsu. Are you kidding me? A Chunin-level ninjutsu actually appeared in the hands of a trainee ninja. The seniors around him couldn't help but stare. When they were still embarrassed by the E-class ninjutsu, a freshman can already use a Chunin-level ninjutsu. Even if the opponent is Naruto's son, isn't this too exaggerated? Sighing, the crowd suddenly reacted, not good Garashi-san he. As one of the most difficult C-class ninjutsu, the attack range and lethality of the Great Fireball Jutsu was very large. Even Shushi was scared silly. He stood there in a daze until he was submerged in the fireball. Boom. The heat wave was turbulent, and the flames swallowed everything. I killed Garashi? Seeing this situation, Asma's hands trembled, his pupils lost their light, and his whole body lost its vitality. Just when Asma was grieving, he suddenly felt a chill on his neck, accompanied by Garashi's slightly apologetic voice. I'm sorry, Asma. Asma was overjoyed. He turned back and asked, Garashi, you didn't poop? Garashi withdrew his kunai from Asma's neck and said helplessly, Naruto, Sama didn't make a move, of course, it means that I have the confidence to escape. My annoying father is also here. Shushi had a strange look on his face. Asuma, your tongue? Asma looked embarrassed. I accidentally bit my tongue, cough, I need to control it. Asma straightened his tongue, then changed the topic and asked, by the way, how did you escape? Garashi smiled, of course, it's because of substitution jutsu. You also know substitution jutsu? But I haven't seen you use it before. I didn't use it before, but it doesn't mean I can't. After all, I don't have as much chakra as you do. Asma still couldn't believe it. In just half a month, you not only learned such a powerful medical ninjutsu, but you can also use substitution jutsu so well. Garashi asked with a natural look. For people like us, can't we learn substitution jutsu with just a few glances? Garashi really didn't take this matter to heart. Compared with Uchiha Itachi, who can learn fireball jutsu with just a glance, his performance is actually an ordinary genius. Just a few glances can learn it? Asuma's eyes were blank. He seemed to be at a loss. For a long time, he sighed with gloomy eyes. I may be a burden to geniuses like you. Yes, I'm just an ordinary person, right? For him, who is still in the second year of middle school, the blow of disillusionment is indeed a bit big. Just when Asuma fell into self-doubt, a pair of palms pressed on his shoulders. What are you talking about, Asuma? You are so strong. In terms of real strength, I'm not your opponent at all. With that, Garashi's tone suddenly became serious. If just one failure makes you so depressed as your opponent, I will be very, very disappointed. Asuma looked up, just in time to meet Garashi's eyes that seemed to be jumping and shining. For a moment, inexplicable emotions filled his heart. Asuma sniffed hard and said with a heavy nasal voice, I know next time I will definitely beat you. Seeing Asuma once again become the familiar second year of middle school boy, Garashi laughed. Then let's make the seal of reconciliation. On the other side, as Asuma's instructor, Takeuchi Daikawa bowed his head in shame. Naruto-sama, this is a serious dereliction of duty. Asuma had the best diet, the best resources, and the guidance of a top-notch instructor like him. But in the end he still lost to a newcomer with no resources, a war orphan. Such an ending made Takeuchi Daikawa feel that he could not absolve himself of the blame. Sandaime smiled and waved his hand. You have already done very well. I have seen Asuma's growth. But young Master Asuma still lost. Losing now is better than losing on the battlefield in the future. Moreover, he lost because his opponent was too strong. Sandaime smiled as he knocked on his pipe. If I did not see it with my own eyes, even I would find it hard to believe that a newcomer who has only studied in school for half a month could do this. Takeuchi Daikawa nodded vigorously. That kid is a monster. In the field, cheers came one after another. Sandaime smiled as he watched this scene. Apart from talent, he actually valued Garashi's background and sunshine more. These days he had also understood Garashi's experience. The more he understood, the other party's value. As a war orphan, he was not antisocial, he was not resentful. Instead, he warmed others with a sunny attitude every day. In Woodleaf Hospital, almost every doctor and patient was very fond of him. It was also the same in the ninja school. In just half a month, he was able to make the whole class recognize him as their leader. This is simply the perfect embodiment of the will of fire. No wonder he can say such words. Sandaime sighed in his heart and smiled. Let's go, let's give them the time to laugh. Chapter 16. Woodleaf in a dark underground chamber. Oh, it's the so-called will of fire again. An old man with half his body wrapped in bandages sneered as he looked at the document in his hand. TSK, what an amazing talent. A commoner ninja who entered the school half a month ago was able to defeat Sensei's son. The ninja standing behind the old man said with a pair of snake eyes. If it's you, you should be able to do it too. The old man turned around and asked indifferently. Orochimaru? Orochimaru smiled and didn't comment. He looked at the old man's eyes and asked. Danzo Elder, do you think highly of him? Do you want him to become a member of the Root? Think highly of him? Danzo said coldly. Humph, I don't think highly of anyone who is favored by Sarutobi. A person who can't be ruthless no matter how talented he is, can't become a qualified ninja and, in fact it's because of the will of fire. Orochimaru's mouth slightly raised as he secretly despised Danzo in his heart. He clearly remembered that when Danzo reached out his hand to Jiraiya's disciple, Danzo, who had always been indecisive, decisively cut off all the branches that extended out of the ground, which made Danzo almost want to fight with his sensei. Otherwise, with Minato's amazing talent, how could Danzo pretend that he didn't see it? However, Danzo didn't even care about his own assassination attempt, but he didn't back down when it came to the will of fire. Orochimaru's eyes flashed with a trace of haze, and he secretly sighed. Sensei, in your eyes, what is the village like? The two people with different thoughts were both thinking about their own matters, causing the already quiet underground secret chamber to once again fall into a dead silence. After a while, Danzo put aside the document in his hand and asked, About the matter I told you last time, have you considered it? Orochimaru narrowed his eyes. I have to think this through. After all, he's not someone easy to deal with. Yes, whether it's Namikaze Minato or Shimizu Garashi, they are just small characters who have been tortured by that bastard Sarutobi.
The one who really deserves attention is the guy called Woodleaf White Fang. 1 week Naruto is already enough. If we let such a weak piece of trash become the 4th generation head, it will only drag Woodleaf down into the abyss. The more Danzo spoke, the more excited he became. His whole body seemed to be blooming with a holy light. For the sake of Konoha, we must get rid of him. Orochimaru, who was standing at the side, seemed to be shocked by the dazzling light. He was surprised. Does he really think that he's doing this for Woodleaf? As if venting his dissatisfaction with Sandaime, Danzo regained his calm. Since you're here, it means that you've made your decision. Tell me your conditions. Orochimaru licked his lips and hissed. I want Hashirama's cells. Danzo suddenly turned around and stared coldly at Orochimaru. That experiment has been stopped. You should know that, right? Orochimaru smiled. Danzo-san, are you really willing to give up the means to control the Kyuubi? For the sake of Woodleaf, any price and sacrifice is worth it. Danzo was silent for a moment and then smiled. I really want to know what kind of expression Sarutobi will have when he finds out that his favorite disciple is the same as me. Orochimaru didn't care about Danzo's sarcasm and just sighed. Fate always leads people to different branches. In the outside world, the battle between Garashi and Asuma surprised many people, but that was it. The eyes of adults don't always stay on children. It seems that their peaceful life is back on track again. Ring, finally the class is over. The theory class is super boring. That's right, when is the actual combat class? Hey, you should at least leave some face for Yagami-sensei. It seems so. Then let's go out and play. Let's play the violent football Garashi told us last time. Okay, I want to be on the same side as Garashi-san. Damn it, you and the class leader were on the same team yesterday. It should be our turn today. There aren't many classes in the 1st grade, so there's enough time for them to vent their excess energy between the adjacent classes. In the classroom, Garashi looked at this scene with a smile. Obviously, his small group offensive has begun to show results. Herd mentality was a universal phenomenon, especially in children who were still immature. When he established an excellent, reliable, and friendly image and labeled himself as the perfect person, these elementary school students who are still ignorant of interpersonal relationships will naturally take the initiative to gather around him. Of course, there are exceptions. Student Shuei-mu, don't you want to play together? Garashi smiled and invited someone in the corner. Although he was jealous, Shuei-mu didn't dare to openly refute Garashi's authority in the class, so he simply pretended not to hear it. However, just this alone was enough to make many people unhappy. What's with your attitude, you bastard? Garashi is talking to you. Arrogant guy, I really want to beat you up. Shuei-mu didn't expect that his subtle venting of dissatisfaction would be targeted. For a moment he was at a loss and apologized. I'm sorry, I'm just not feeling well, I didn't mean to. Listening to Shuei-mu's grievance and resentment, Garashi tried to smooth things over. Don't be like this, we're all classmates. Classmates should take care of each other and help each other. As if he didn't notice Shuei-mu's strange behavior, Garashi looked at him, sincerely, and said, Shuei-mu, I'm really sorry, I apologize to you on behalf of them. However, I can actually see that you really want to join us, right? If you have any concerns, please be sure to tell me. After all, for people like us, the only people we can rely on are our friends, right? Shuei-mu's body trembled slightly, but he still didn't look up. Garashi didn't care. After he finished speaking, he took the lead and walked outside. However, when he passed by Kurenai Red's seat, he stopped for a moment and glanced in her direction. Red, do you want to go together? Huh? Me? Kurenai Red was a little tempted, but when she looked at the boys around Garashi, she finally shook her head and said, This is a sport for you guys, I won't be joining. Okay, then next time I'll design some games suitable for you girls to play. Garashi walked out of the classroom with a smile, but in his heart he was secretly thinking, I've already confirmed that Jin Hong returned to the village after completing the mission yesterday. These few days are his rest days, so it's about time to launch the plan. I just don't know how far the current psychological suggestion has progressed. If it's too late, I might have to increase the intensity. Garashi, what's wrong? Seeing that Garashi was a little distracted, Asuma asked. Nothing, I just noticed some unfriendly gazes. Garashi didn't show the slightest hint of strangeness. He just turned around and looked behind him. Asuma also turned his head and followed Garashi's gaze. At this moment, outside the classroom 2 floors above them, a few boys who looked like delinquents were sitting on the guardrail and pointing at them. Those guys are third-year students, trash who like to bully newcomers. As the son of Hokage,
His information channels were naturally far more well-informed than the freshmen. Bullying freshmen? Garashi rubbed his chin and asked like an adult. Many people in the second grade have been bullied by them, but... Asma crossed his arms and snorted disdainfully, as long as I, Asma, am here, those bastards will dare to provoke us. Indeed, there were few people around who were afraid. Not to mention Asma's identity as Naruto's son, the strength he and Garashi showed in the previous battle is far beyond the level of ordinary students. School bullies? Garashi looked at the delinquents with a meaningful gaze, then smiled and called everyone to walk towards the field. PS1. In Kabuto's part of the plot at that time, the Uchiha clan was still in the Third Shinobi World War, and Danzo was already dressed like a bandaged man. PS2. Although in the anime, Danzo launched the assassination after the Kyuubi's rebellion, but looking at his skillful operation, the author felt that it was reasonable to think that it wasn't the first time. By the way, as a good friend of Sandaime, it's impossible for Danzo not to know the strength of Sandaime. But in the anime, Danzo was naive to think that he could assassinate Sandaime by relying on Yamato. If it's considered in the novel, there are two possibilities. One is that Woodleaf was too strong before, so he was targeted, so Sandaime and Danzo deliberately love each other to give the outside world the illusion of internal strife and weakness. The second is that Danzo is constantly testing Sandaime's bottom line. But no matter which possibility it is, Danzo has a precedent of assassination before, which should be explainable. Chapter 17. Seeing many freshmen provoking them with their eyes, the hoodlums sitting on the third floor were very unhappy. Bastard, what's with that look in their eyes? Humph, do they think that by relying on the identity of Naruto's son, we won't dare to teach them a lesson? Having said that, they didn't have much confidence in their words, and their eyes couldn't help but drift towards the person in the middle. Shunin, what do you think? You are the rising star of the Uchiha clan, you can't lose to the Sarutobi clan. In their view, although the Sarutobi clan has the backing of Sandaime Naruto, it's still not enough for the Uchiha clan, which has been famous since the Warring States period. Moreover, they don't think that a fight between children can cause any substantial conflict between the two big clans. The boy named Shunin seemed a little hesitant. His father told him not to have any conflicts with the Naruto clan in school. The philosophy and pride he received since childhood made him unable to understand why the Uchiha clan, as the most powerful clan in the Woodleaf clan, should give in to others, but his father insisted, so he finally agreed. It's also because of this that he mixed with these companions, using the method of bullying the weak to cover up his lack of confidence. However, he would never tell anyone the weak excuse his father had given him. After thinking for a while, Shunin shook his head and said, although I'm not afraid of that Asma, it's not good. They have now learned to group up. When the time comes, we may have to face a small group of dozens of people. No way? A group of freshmen know how to group up? They should just look difficult to deal with. If they really encounter trouble, maybe they will retreat. In fact, they were already a little hesitant. For most of the students who don't know ninjutsu, the deterrence of numbers is quite effective. They only rely on the strength of small groups to bully in school. Even the older students don't dare to provoke them. Thinking of this, the dissatisfaction in their hearts gradually dissipated, and some of them said with some interest, "They're lucky. I'll go find the second-year guys to borrow some money." However, those cowards from the second years seem to have started to band together. It's okay, we'll just find the easiest to bully. Besides, there aren't any freakish geniuses like those freshmen in the second grade. With Boss Shunyan around, they won't dare to stand up for others. On the sports field. Hurry up and stop Asma. Don't give him the chance to use his doppelganger technique. Damn it, we're at a disadvantage if we don't know ninjutsu. Don't worry, we also have a class leader here. Garashi, I won't lose to you this time. Asma dribbled the ball and his 5 figures changed positions back and forth. He shouted as he rushed toward Garashi. Didn't you notice that you have one more? Garashi said with a smile. What? Asma was confused and subconsciously kicked the ball to his other self. Asma, number 5 didn't continue to move forward after receiving the ball. Instead he smiled strangely. Asma, thanks. Bang! Asma, number 5 turned into Garashi's appearance and quickly dribbled the ball back to the field. Is the one talking to me a doppelganger? Damn it, when did this happen? Asma was annoyed. If Garashi hadn't used words to disturb his mind, he would have been able to detect it at the last moment. Garashi didn't choose to dribble the ball and go straight in. Instead he kicked the ball to his teammates. Even if his teammates often lost the ball, he still patiently did his supporting work. For him, individual heroism like Asma wasn't desirable. Although, in terms of victory alone, it was the best way to do it. Just as the game was getting more and more intense, a little girl from the class rushed over. Not good, the class is fighting. However, Shushi did not see any trace of panic on her face. Instead, he saw a hint of eagerness and excitement on her face. Is this enough of a hint? Garashi had roughly guessed what had happened, but he still pretended to be surprised and asked, Suzuki-sen, what's wrong with you? It's Kurenai, Mikawakeru, Hanako, and Yui. They're fighting. Huh. Why are they suddenly fighting? It's because Yui and the other two launched a battle to protect the class monitor. Hiss. Everyone turned to look at Shushi with a strange look in their eyes. Although the children in this world matured early, they didn't know how to fall in love at the age of 5 or 6. In Garashi's view, this kind of ignorant emotion was actually more of a yearning for beautiful things. This kind of beauty could be on all levels. Appearance, shape, character, temperament, knowledge, these beauty would make people feel comfortable and spontaneously surround those who were better. For immature children, they didn't know how to hide their emotions, so it wasn't difficult to accept that it caused an azura field. In fact, this kind of thing was not rare in Garashi's previous life. Thanks to his family's excellent genes, his little nephew, who was still in kindergarten, had complained to him many times that it was difficult to lead a harem. Of course, with Garashi's ability, he could have prevented this from happening. The current situation was actually driven by him behind the scenes. Sigh, I even have to deceive the feelings of a 5-year-old lowly. I'm really a scumbag. Garashi sighed and returned to the classroom. As soon as he entered the classroom, he heard a commotion and crying coming from the classroom. My head hurts, sob. Ah. Hanako is not responding. What? Hanako is not breathing? What? Hanako is dead. Oh, go tell Yagami-sensei. 2 little girls were sitting on the ground crying, and another little girl was lying quietly on the side. Kurenai was sitting in her seat, looking overwhelmed, and her big eyes were filled with hazy mist. As for the surrounding crowd, they were blindly cheering. After a few glances, Garashi had already speculated the general process. It should be Hanako and the other 2 who wanted to find trouble with Kurenai. However, Kurenai was the #1 genius of Konoha in Genjutsu. Naturally, 3 ordinary girls couldn't deal with her. Her Genjutsu was enough to kill them. However, Kurenai obviously underestimated the power of Genjutsu. For immature children, the danger of Genjutsu is obviously higher than other ninjutsu. Yui and Kurenai were fine, but Hanako, who had weaker resistance, directly fainted. Moreover, unlike the future elite female ninja, the current Kurenai is just a little girl with a little talent. Naturally, she was scared out of her wits when she encountered this kind of thing. Seeing Garashi come in, Kurenai subconsciously ran forward, grabbing Garashi's clothes and sobbing, Garashi, I may have killed someone, please arrest me. Garashi smiled and comforted her. Things are not as bad as you think, Hanako should have just fainted. Is it true? Kurenai looked at Garashi and asked as if she was worried about being abandoned by her master. Everyone in the classroom also noticed the arrival of Garashi, and as if they found their backbone, they swarmed up and explained to Garashi what happened before. Garashi opened his hands and said with a gentle and powerful voice, Don't worry, I'm here. It was just a short sentence, but it seemed to have infinite magic, causing the noisy classroom to instantly quiet down. Seeing this situation, the little boys like Asma were envious, and they also wanted to have such prestige, while the other little girls looked at Garashi with worship, waiting for his performance. Chapter 18. The noisy classroom quieted down and Garashi stepped forward. After observing for a moment, he formed a seal with his hands and pressed them on Hanako's forehead. Seeing this, everyone held their breath and didn't dare to make a sound. It didn't take long for Hanako's frowning eyebrows to relax, and then she woke up leisurely under everyone's expectant eyes. Wow. Hanako is alive. Great, I knew the class leader would be able to do it. Is this the tranquility technique? It's only been a few days and Garashi has mastered another medical ninjutsu. On the side, Asma's eyes were full of confusion. Isn't it said that medical ninjutsu and genjutsu are the most difficult to master? Garashi didn't immerse himself in the cheers of the crowd, but turned to Yui and Tsutomu, and gave them both a tranquility technique, moving the 2 forgotten girls. Asma, Ibixi, come and help me send them to the hospital. Although he wasn't sure whether Asuma would still go on the original path, in order not to let Asuma ruin his plan, Garashi decided to take the initiative to call Asuma. "Oh, I'm coming." Asuma didn't know the dark thoughts in Garashi's heart. After recovering from the sluggish state, he rushed forward and said gloomily, "You actually learned ninjutsu behind my back. Damn it, if I don't work hard, the number of ninjutsu I learned will be surpassed by you." Before Garashi could answer, Ibixi's voice came faintly from the side, "Don't struggle, you will surpass me sooner or later. Damn it, even a fellow like you is looking down on me?" However, before Asuma could finish venting his anger, something that made him even more depressed happened. He saw Yui staring at him with a look of vigilance and resistance, then she stepped back and said, "No, I can walk by myself." Seeing the other party take 2 steps back, Asuma's mind was in a mess. "Oh, you must be joking." Ibixi sneered coldly. Then he heard Smokey whisper, "Oh, why am I not the one who fainted? I'm so envious of Wako." Ibixi's body stiffened as he looked at Asuma. Both of their eyes flashed with a sense of empathy. By the time he was done with the hospital matters, it was already afternoon. When Garashi returned to the classroom, everyone swarmed up to him and asked about the situation. "Don't worry, everything is fine now." Garashi comforted her with a smile. Since Garashi said so, I'm relieved. Haha, today I have the inexplicable excitement of a real ninja. Everyone was having a good time, and in the midst of the hustle and bustle, a lonely figure was sleeping on the seat. Garashi walked towards the figure. "Red, are you alright?" Red did not speak, but her head buried in her elbow shook slightly. "I know you're blaming yourself, aren't you?" Red did not speak, closing herself in her own harbor. Garashi was not surprised and comforted her gently. "Actually, you didn't do anything wrong. If it were me, I would have made the same choice as you." Hearing Garashi's words, Red raised her head timidly. "But I almost killed Yui. I don't want to use genjutsu anymore." "Of course, there's nothing wrong with using genjutsu to protect yourself. What's wrong is using genjutsu on your companions." "Sure enough, I still..." Hearing this, Red lowered her head again in frustration. "No, I'm the one who's wrong. As the class monitor, I didn't find and adjust your conflict in time, causing you who should have been companions to go against each other. So, you and Wako are not wrong, the only one who's wrong is me." No. Red shook her head. "How can you be wrong? It's obviously..." Without waiting for Red to finish, Garashi went straight to the podium. "Everyone, can you listen to me?" Hearing Garashi's voice, everyone in the classroom quieted down. "Today, something unpleasant happened in our class, but please don't blame Wako and Red. I didn't fulfill my responsibility as the class monitor. If I cared about everyone, this kind of thing wouldn't have happened. I'm sorry I've caused trouble for everyone." There's no such thing." Class monitor, you look down on people too much." "That's right, we didn't do anything at all, it's obviously you, the class monitor, who was busy." "Asuma and Ibixi? That's me being unreasonable. We are all ninjas, and in the future the only thing we can rely on is the companions around us. Therefore, I hope that each of us can be our own back and each of us can be our own shackles. So, I hope that each of us can be our own back and each of us can be our own shackles. Is that okay? I want to be friends with you forever." "Of course. We will always be friends. That's for sure. Garashi, how are Hanako and the others?" The 8 gods suddenly opened the door, and then, frightened by the fanatical atmosphere in the classroom, he asked embarrassedly, "Do you want to continue?" After school, Garashi was tidying up his small bag when suddenly, a small hand pulled the corner of his clothes from the front. Garashi looked up and saw that it was Red, who had recovered a lot of her vitality. "Garashi, thank you." Red clenched her small fist and said seriously, "We're friends?" Garashi sighed, "And this misunderstanding is actually because of me?" Hearing this, Red interrupted him angrily, "How can you say that? I'm not that weak." "I'm not. Forget it, it's nothing." Garashi smiled and shook his head, "Then let's go together." Red's eyes were a bit erratic, she looked at the ceiling and said, "Garashi, you go first, I want to stay in the classroom for a while." Garashi looked at her up and down suspiciously, his small hand holding his chin. "Speaking of which, you didn't seem to stand up in the afternoon. Could it be that your foot is injured?" Garashi's tone became a bit serious. No. Red repeatedly waved her hand, but looking at Garashi's determined eyes, she could not help but admit defeat and whispered, "Yes, they pushed me and accidentally sprained my foot." "Why didn't you say this earlier?" Garashi said with a straight face. Come, I'll take you to the hospital now. No, absolutely not. However, Red's attitude this time was incomparably firm. Is it because of Hanako and the others? Garashi quickly understood the root of the problem. Red puffed up her cheeks and did not speak. Okay, I understand. Shushi sighed helplessly. He squatted down and began to treat her. I'm sorry to trouble you again. Red did not have any strange thoughts, she just felt that the palm of Garashi's hand on her ankle was a bit warm and, seriously, treating Garashi is too handsome. Not long after, Garashi finished the treatment. Okay, you can stand up and try to walk a few steps. Red obediently stood up and walked carefully. Oh, I really feel much better. That's good, let's go, I'll take you home. With that, Garashi helped to put away Red's school bag. I can carry it myself. Wounded people must listen to the doctor. Well, by the way, my father is also at home today, he is a very powerful genjutsu ninja. Red took the initiative to find a topic. Jinhong-senpai? I heard from the people in the village that his genjutsu is the strongest in our wood leaf. Garashi said with longing. Yes. Chapter 19. Sushi, Sashimi, Tempura. The middle-aged ninja nodded in satisfaction as he looked at the masterpiece in front of him. Today's dinner was a great success. Dad, I'm back. A cheerful voice came from the entrance. The middle-aged ninja's eyebrows jumped as he hurriedly poked half of his body out of the kitchen. Red, guess tonight's dinner? Then she saw her precious daughter being supported by a little boy as they walked in. Uncle, sorry to disturb you. Shinka didn't have time to think about Garashi's appearance as he jumped out in shock. Red, what happened? Are you hurt? Red was a little embarrassed. I fought with a classmate. Oh, that's good. Hearing this, Shinka let out a sigh of relief. He was very clear about his daughter's strength. If it was just a fight between classmates, she definitely wouldn't be at a disadvantage. However, Red's next words almost scared him to death. I'm fine, but I accidentally used genjutsu and almost killed a classmate. Red said with some lingering fear. Is your classmate okay? Shinku asked nervously. She's fine. Garashi saved her. It's not as serious as you say. Hanako just fainted. Hearing this, Shinka let out a sigh of relief. For ninjas, killing people is not unusual, but if they kill people from the same village, they will inevitably be blamed and abused. He really can't imagine what kind of eyes Kurenai will have to bear to live if this really happens. Thinking of this, Shinka looked at Garashi with a gentle gaze. Ahem, Red, you still haven't introduced your friend to me. Hearing this, Red proudly puffed out her chest. This is our class leader, Shimizu Garashi. He's super strong. Shinku's eyes flashed with surprise. He was the Shimizu Garashi who defeated Naruto-sama's son? For the calm and peaceful Konoha, this is already a big news. Garashi-san, thank you so much. No, I should be the one apologizing to you. Apologize? Shinku was confused. Why are you talking about this again? Red puffed out her cheeks. Before Red could say anything, Garashi said with self-blame, I've already asked around. The reason why Hanako and the others are looking for trouble with Red is actually because they found out that I often peek at Red in class. Peek at me? Red's face was red and she didn't dare to look at Garashi. True, Red Sunset's face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and his impression of Shushi plummeted. He knew that the kids in school were usually precocious, but his daughter was only 5 years old. This bastard was a pervert. I need to design a genjutsu to get this kid back on the right track. Garashi noticed that there was something wrong with the two's expressions, so he waved his hand. You might have misunderstood. I was peeking at Red because I know that Shinku-senpai is Wood Leaf's strongest genjutsu ninja. I was wondering if I could learn genjutsu from you. So that's the case. This kid has good eyesight. Shinku was quite pleased with himself. Just when he thought that he could breathe a sigh of relief, he saw that his precious daughter had a disappointed look on her face. This made his heart tighten again. Damn it, don't tell me Kurenai is all ready? Shinka didn't dare to think any further, and he glared at Rinsei. You little, cough cough, I heard that you wanted to become a medical ninja, right? Why do you want to learn genjutsu from me now? Garashi was naturally prepared for this kind of question. When he heard him ask, his little face showed a hint of seriousness. I want to become a great medical ninja, so I want to learn genjutsu from you. At first, I thought that I could use genjutsu to deceive people's pain to achieve the effect of assisting surgery, but later on, I gradually realized that genjutsu can only heal people's physical pain, but it can't heal the scars of the heart.
Healing the heart is just as important as healing the body. Is this Garashi's philosophy? You're amazing. Red looked at Shushi with admiration. Her eyes sparkled like little stars. This kid actually has such ideals and tolerance. No, I can't be moved by him. Shinku was a little touched at first, but when he saw the admiration in Red's eyes, his expression immediately became fierce. After pondering for a moment, Shinku nodded. I can let you learn Genjutsu from me, but it's very difficult to learn Genjutsu. You have to drop out of the Ninja Academy and learn Genjutsu with me wholeheartedly. Don't worry, even if you don't go to the Ninja Academy, you can still become a ninja. With my guidance, you'll definitely gain more than the Ninja Academy. He naturally wanted to cut off Garashi's connection with Red. After all, she was a child and she would lose her memories after a few days. As for his guidance, he just had to find an empty field to avoid Red. While Shinku was happily thinking about this, he suddenly heard Garashi's reply. Shinka-senpai, I'm sorry but I can't drop out of the Ninja Academy. Wait, you don't want to learn Genjutsu anymore? Shinku hurriedly asked. Of course I want to learn, but I value my promise more. I said that I would advance and retreat with everyone, so how can I be a deserter? Garashi replied firmly. That's right, I'm also learning Genjutsu from Dad and I didn't drop out either, right? Red pouted. How long has it been and I'm about to lose my position? Shinku's heart was sour and he said with grievance, Red, your talent in Genjutsu is the best I've ever seen, so of course you don't need to spend too much time on it, but him. Just because he's talented in medical ninjutsu doesn't mean he's talented in Genjutsu. If I'm not talented, I can train harder every night. Shinka-senpai, please give me a chance. While Shinku was still hesitating, Red couldn't help but pat her chest and say, It's okay, if Dad doesn't want to teach, then I'll teach you. Garashi, I'll teach you Genjutsu in the future. Shinku almost spat out blood and he hurriedly said, Wait, I didn't say I won't teach him, I mean. Right, I'm worried that he won't be able to learn it well, and it'll ruin my reputation. How about this, when I'm not on a mission, I'll take out 2 hours every night to teach you, but I'm not going to be your teacher. I understand, thank you, Shinka-senpai. Garashi's face was filled with excitement, and he turned his head to the side. Red, thank you so much. Hee, do we still need to thank each other? Red put her hands behind her back and she happily swayed her body. Seeing this, Shinku felt as if he had swallowed a fly. By the way, Garashi, do you want to stay and have dinner with us? Seeing that Shinku's face was about to turn green, Garashi didn't want to provoke him too much. No need, I still have something to do at the hospital. Okay then, see you tomorrow. Okay, see you tomorrow. Seeing that his lifelong enemy had finally left, Shinku was finally relieved. But before he could breathe a sigh of relief, Red suddenly said, Dad, teach me Genjutsu too. Red, you're finally willing to face your talent? True Crimson Sunset was overjoyed. He had been too forceful in the past, which had triggered Red's rebellious nature. After learning illusions for a period of time, she was no longer willing to learn them. Red nodded. Of course, I don't want to fall behind Garashi too much. Shinku's face was blank and he covered his chest with both hands. It hurts. Phew, I've finally gotten a free ride. After walking for some distance, Shushi finally took a deep breath, which was a rare sight. In fact, if he just wanted to learn Genjutsu from Shinku, he didn't need to go through so much trouble. With his talent, as long as he had a good relationship with Red, Shinku wouldn't mind accepting a talented disciple. But the problem is, unlike the instructor of the ninja team, there can only be one official teacher in the ninja world. If he chose to become Shinku's disciple, he would lose the possibility of becoming Tsunade's disciple, but he didn't want to give up on Genjutsu, so he came up with this compromise. Although there were some twists and turns on the way, at least it was a success. Next, it's time to conquer Tsunade. Garashi sighed. But before that, I should focus on practicing Genjutsu, maybe it can be a breakthrough. Chapter 20. It was night and a cool breeze blew past. Two figures, one big and one small, were sitting opposite each other on the riverside lawn. The so-called Genjutsu is a type of yin release. It uses mental energy and chakra to interfere with the opponent's 5 senses, causing them to fall into an illusion. Although he still didn't like Shushi, True Red Sunset didn't hide anything from him. He did his best to explain illusions to Shushi. In other words, Genjutsu can be divided into visual, auditory, olfactory, taste and tactile senses? Garashi asked as he lifted his chin. There's such a thing? Shinku's eyes lit up. Ninjas didn't have a high level of basic knowledge and most of it was still at the elementary level. Even the simplest division of knowledge was rarely done. Indeed, in the past, genjutsu was said to interfere with the five senses, but it was more based on visual, auditory, and tactile senses. Relatively speaking, there's almost no genjutsu that targets smell and taste. If we can develop a genjutsu that targets these two senses, perhaps in the next war the other villages, Shinku-senpai. Seeing that Shinku had fallen into an endless fantasy, Garashi could only remind him. Ah. Shinku woke up and saw Garashi's strange expression. He felt a little awkward, but in order to maintain his dignity, he forced himself to explain, "Do you see? A truly powerful genjutsu ninja has to be like me." Garashi didn't expose him and nodded in agreement. Genjutsu was something that required imagination. "Before I officially guide you in genjutsu, I'll first teach you how to break it." Shinku's expression was solemn. "Only by understanding the weaknesses of genjutsu will you not be targeted on the battlefield. There are two ways to break genjutsu. One is to disrupt the flow of chakra in your body, and the other is to let others disrupt the flow of chakra in your body. It's important to note that only the second method is effective for dojutsu genjutsu. Therefore, when the enemy is an expert who uses eye techniques to cast illusions, you must not face the enemy alone. Although he was the strongest genjutsu ninja and would leave, he would never be able to reach the heights of those genjutsu ninjas in history. Because of that, he was overjoyed after discovering Red's illusion talent. He wanted to prove that a person's talent and hard work could break the rule of bloodline. Garashi didn't pay much attention to Shinji Kurenai's disappointment. Instead he asked, "Disrupting the flow of chakra in your body? Wasn't that essentially controlling the body? If I can control my body perfectly, does that mean that I'm immune to the first type of illusion?" Shinku paused for a moment, then smiled and shook his head. "You're not wrong, but this is something that only the god of ninjas like the first Hokage can do." Garashi didn't comment, but in his heart he thought, "Perfect control of my body, the Hashiman Tanku?" Garashi wasn't as enthusiastic about the Hashiman Tanku as some of his seniors. He was very clear about his own advantages, talent, thinking, learning ability, and so on. However, these were not very useful for the Hashiman Tanku. Spending 20 years to obtain a moment of brilliance wasn't worth it for a genius. At least in Garashi's view, he had more ways to obtain this level of power. However, this didn't mean that Garashi didn't value the Hashiman Tanku. What he wanted to do was to walk the path of the lower levels of the Hashiman Tanku. For example, opening 2 or 3 gates in his body, repairing the damage caused by the Hashiman Tanku with medical ninjutsu, and then storing the excess chakra in the Yin seal. In times of crisis he could even use creation rebirth to open more gates. The difficulty of realizing this dream was that he had to repair the gates in his body all the time. This not only required a high level of chakra control, but it also required him to be able to do 2 things at once. In addition, the cultivation of his physique was also very important. The stronger the body, the less damage caused by the gates, and the less yang released chakra would be used to repair the body. Otherwise, the chakra released from the gates might not be enough to repair his body. Shinka didn't know that Garashi was still thinking about taijutsu in his illusion class. After a little sigh he said, "The strength of an illusion mainly depends on 2 aspects. The first is the strength of one's spiritual will, and the second is the authenticity of the illusion. Do you know why the illusions of those with strong eye techniques are stronger than those of ordinary people?" Garashi also withdrew his divergent thoughts and answered without hesitation, "Eye techniques don't require any hand seals, and are more convenient to hide than ordinary illusions." Shinku nodded in agreement and asked, "What else?" Garashi pondered for a moment and asked, "Can the eyes be used as amplifiers to enhance the spiritual strength of illusions?" "Amplifiers? That's an interesting way to put it." Shinku Kurenai sighed. "Genjutsu ninjas like us spend a lot of effort to create realistic illusions, but in the end we still can't compare to the simple illusions created by dojutsu ninjas. The reason is that their spiritual source is much stronger than ours." Shushi nodded gently. Indeed, the strength of one's spirit origin was unreasonable. Just like Uchiha Itachi's Tsukuyomi, it clearly created a completely illogical world, and the enemy knew immediately that they were in an illusion, but they couldn't break free. According to Garashi's understanding in his previous life, this was like the saying in Shinsha novels, "One strength breaks all spells." No matter how crude the illusion was, if one's spiritual strength wasn't strong enough, they wouldn't be able to break free. However, it wasn't entirely true that the authenticity of illusions was very important. The best proof was the infinite Tsukuyomi,
An ultimate illusion that could create realistic illusions that could pull people in the entire world into an illusion and make them lose themselves in it. Thinking of this, Garashi asked, Shinku-senpai, is there no way to increase my spiritual strength? Increase my spiritual strength? I've never heard of such a thing, but... Shinku shook his head and said with some hesitation, legend has it that Shodame-sama's spiritual will was so strong that he could interfere with reality, but he didn't seem to have such power in the beginning. If you think about Shodame-sama's experience of pacifying the warring states period, perhaps the method is to experience the baptism of war or the baptism of life and death, and from there, comprehend faith and strengthen oneself. Garashi nodded thoughtfully. It was precisely because he knew more than Shinku that he placed more importance on spiritual growth. For example, Ajura Indra's spiritual will cause his chakra to reincarnate several times, and Hagoromo-senpai lived in a soul state between life and death, and even pulled the souls of the village Kage back to the real world with his own strength. That kind of mental strength was simply unimaginably strong. Chakra, spiritual strength, soul. Perhaps I need a technique that can touch the essence of the soul. Seeing that Garashi was silent, Shinku thought that Garashi was affected by the limitations of illusions. Cough cough, actually you don't have to be too depressed. Just like a person's talent, you still have to rely on yourself to discover your own potential. Otherwise, why didn't the title of Wood Leaf's strongest genjutsu ninja fall into the hands of those dojutsu families? Although Garashi didn't drink Shinku's chicken soup for the soul, he still pretended to be encouraged. I understand, Shinku-senpai. Aha, next is the beginner level of genjutsu cultivation. Degrade genjutsu, magical illusion, Narakujutsu. The hand seal is Mouse's way. Feel the terror of genjutsu. Chapter 21. The night wind was a little cold and it felt like it was blowing into someone's heart. I must have been hit by a genjutsu, I must have. Beside the river, Shinku made a hand seal. Release. With your willpower, do you need to go through so much trouble to break my genjutsu? Garashi tilted his head and asked in confusion. When I said genjutsu, I didn't mean. Forget it. Shinku's mouth twitched slightly, and he stared at Garashi with a burning gaze. Your talent in genjutsu is the best I've ever seen. Don't learn any medical ninjutsu, just learn genjutsu from me. Garashi's expression was strange. Is this the so-called scumbag template? Yesterday, Shinku said that Shinku was the best genjutsu he's ever seen, and now he's talking about someone else. If my talent in medical ninjutsu is the result of self-harming efforts and learning methods, then my talent in genjutsu is more of a gift from the experience of my previous life and the fusion of my soul. Relatively speaking, my talent in genjutsu can be regarded as a top-notch genius. It's a pity that you can give me too little. Garashi felt that it was a pity, but he still replied with a firm expression. Shinku-senpai, I'm sorry, but my dream is to become a medical ninjutsu like Tsunade-sama. Although it was a little rude, Garashi didn't think much of Shinku's genjutsu level. It was fine for him to be a freeloader, but he didn't want to formally become his disciple. This was the limit of genjutsu. The strongest genjutsu masters in this world were all from the Uchiha clan, and Shinku's genjutsu was already the peak of what an ordinary genjutsu ninja could achieve. Fortunately, Garashi already had a plan for the future of genjutsu, but the prerequisites for this plan weren't met yet. It's a pity. Although Shinku knew that the more talented a person was, the less likely it was for them to change their beliefs, hearing Garashi's words still made him feel a little regretful. At least medical ninjutsu ninjas had Tsunade-sama to support them, but genjutsu masters were really few and far between. Forget it, this is also good. If he wholeheartedly learns illusions from me, he might be able to empty my pockets in less than 2 years. Truard Sunset comforted himself and forced a smile. Come, let's begin the next stage of our cultivation. Time slipped away like sand between one's fingers. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had passed. Wait, don't come over. Don't worry, my saber is very fast. No, I don't want to see you anymore. Let me leave. Hey, you want to leave after entering the hospital? Hurry up and hold him down. Wait, what are you holding in your hands? Oh, this is a good thing that can make you forget your pain. Physical anesthesia. Why is there no effect? One more time, physical anesthesia. You can't do it like this. You didn't control your strength well. Let me do it. Don't hit me, please just cut me off. Since you've made such a request then, where's the enchantment class? Hurry up and set up a sound sealing enchantment. Outside Konoha Hospital, listening to the screams coming from the ward, Nanoyu awkwardly apologized to the side. Tsunade-sama, I'm sorry to make you laugh. Tsunade calmly shook her head. I've seen worse than this when I performed surgery before. But what's that physical anesthesia? Don't you know? This surgery should have been discussed a month ago. A month ago? I'm really incompetent as the director of Woodleaf Hospital. Tsunade laughed at herself. Tsunade-sama, we all know that you're afraid. Nanoyu hurriedly said, but he was interrupted by Tsunade before he could finish. Incompetent is incompetent. There's no need to explain it to me. Tsunade waved her hand in annoyance. If it weren't for the old man refusing to let me go, you'd be more suitable to be the director. Tsunade-sama. Nanoyu didn't know how to answer for a while, so he took the initiative to change the topic. Speaking of physical anesthesia, many conservatives opposed it at first. When it came to conservatives, Tsunade was a little interested. What's going on? Because the essence of this surgery is to let the injured temporarily forget the pain and complete the treatment in peace. Forget the pain? Thinking of the screams that still lingered in her ears, Tsunade's expression became a little strange. However, she could understand why the conservatives were against it. In the principles of ninja, enduring pain is a virtue, and also the cultivation of the will. Although they don't advocate that everyone take the initiative to feel pain, but those who want to anesthetize even the pain of illness are definitely a disgrace to ninja in the eyes of those conservatives. By the way, how does the physical anesthesia you just mentioned make the patient forget the pain? Thinking of this, Tsunade asked curiously. Well, Nanoyu's right index finger gently scratched his cheek. His eyes were a little erratic. At this time, the door of the ward where the screams came from was pushed open. Two petite and cute nurses came out, each holding a thick wooden stick half the height of a person in their arms, which was a sharp contrast with their petite figure, giving a sense of extreme disharmony. Few finally anesthetized him. Good physique is also a kind of trouble. Yes, if... Captain Nanoyu Tsunade-sama. Tsunade-sama. While talking, the two quickly hid the wooden sticks behind them. Tsunade-sama, this is... Nanoyu looked embarrassed. You don't have to say it, I think I should have understood it all. Looking at the small wooden sticks sticking out from behind the two, Tsunade's mouth twitched and said, Ahem, actually, we all paid attention to the strength of our hands and our ninja's physique is very good. You see, that ninja was anesthetized for so long before he fainted. Nanoyu explained with a lack of confidence. I don't mean to blame you. Tsunade shook her head with some memories in her eyes. If it was me in the past, maybe I would have done more. Well, more imaginative than you. Nanoyu pushed his glasses and was silent. He heard that Tsunade-sama used to have the title of Devil King, but now... By the way, who proposed this operation? If I didn't know that Jiraiya isn't in Woodleaf now, I would have thought that this was his doing. It was Garashi-kun's proposal. He is the most popular little genius in our Woodleaf hospital. Shimizu Garashi? Tsunade raised her eyebrows and asked in surprise. Tsunade-sama, you also know Garashi? Nanoyu was stunned at first and then immediately reacted, Oh, is it because of the battle between Garashi and Naruto-sama's son? Oh, it's more than that. Tsunade smiled meaningfully. Shizun has mentioned to me more than once how steady and reliable their class leader is, but now it seems... Shizun? Is she Garashi's classmate? Nanoyu didn't think much and defended Garashi. Of course, Garashi-kun is very reliable, but he becomes a little radical when it comes to the patient, and this is also a compromise that little Garashi proposed to us. A compromise? Well, at first, Garashi proposed to establish a genjutsu department to complete the operation while the patient is immersed in genjutsu. He even proposed to expand the scope of the genjutsu department to outside the operation, such as soothing the soul, dispelling worries and curing pain. Unfortunately, ordinary genjutsu ninjas can't do this at all. Curing pain. Tsunade pursed her lips and sighed. This idea is indeed beautiful, but the requirements for illusion immersion are a bit high. Nanoyu nodded helplessly. If the illusion immersion is not enough, the huge pain will directly pull the patient out of the illusion. Moreover, there are few genjutsu that can last as long as a surgery. Relatively speaking, physical anesthesia is more feasible. At this moment there was a noise deep in the corridor. Chapter 22. No, absolutely not. However, if she moves around during the operation and affects the operation, it may cause irreversible consequences. That's not good either.
In that case we have no choice. In the corridor, a middle-aged woman and several nurses were arguing fiercely. Can you tell me what happened here? A cold voice came from the side. A few young nurses turned around to look and let out cheerful exclamations. Tsunade-sama. Hearing these nurses call out the name of the person who came, the middle-aged woman's momentum weakened, but soon rushed to her desperately. Tsunade-sama, please save my daughter. Don't get too excited. Tsunade comforted her and asked several young nurses, what the hell is going on? Actually, this is the case. This big sister's daughter needs surgery, but she's too young. If we don't give her anesthesia, it may affect the operation. The young nurse looked at the little girl in the ward with half helplessness and half pity. Tsunade followed her gaze to the ward and saw a little girl of 2 or 3 years old sitting on a chair with tears in her eyes. Beside her, a slightly older boy was looking after and comforting her. Tsunade didn't think much and said with a dignified expression, if we can't find a way to control her body, it will be dangerous to perform the operation rashly. The young nurse nodded, we also have this concern, so we want to give her anesthesia. The middle-aged woman on the side was furious. Is that anesthesia? That's murder. The young nurse looked embarrassed. Actually, we have another one. Seeing the other's murderous eyes, the young nurse didn't continue. I can use chakra scalpel to temporarily cut off her pain nerves, but she's still too young, it's hard to say whether it will affect her life in the future. Tsunade seriously pondered and remembered Nanoyu's previous proposal. Have you tried genjutsu? We have tried, but the little girl woke up soon. The young nurse said helplessly, moreover, the village's adults who are proficient in genjutsu are also performing tasks outside. Tsunade shook her head slightly. She knew that the genjutsu ninja mentioned by the nurse didn't include that clan. After all, that clan was famous for their arrogance. Coupled with their position in the police force, most people in the village stayed away from them. The Uchiha clan. Tsunade hesitated. She didn't have much interaction with the Uchiha clan, and her identity as the princess of the Senju clan might trigger an allergic reaction from the Uchiha clan. At this moment, a small figure standing at the door broke everyone's contemplation. Actually, Sister Red Bean is ready for surgery now. Garashi, what do you mean? Nonayu's eyes lit up. She knew better than anyone else what Garashi had done in the past 2 months. Is Shimizu Garashi? Tsunade finally realized that the little boy in the ward wasn't the little girl's brother. Garashi nodded his head. I have already applied genjutsu on Sister Red Bean. She should be ready for surgery. Without waiting for the crowd to question, Nonayu stepped into the ward first. Looking at the sweet sleeping little girl, she carefully put her right hand on her. Soon Nonayu came out with a happy face. Tsunade-sama, please come and take a look. Seeing this, a thought of disbelief flashed through the minds of the nurses. Don't tell me it's really a success? Even a Chunin can't do this. P.S. It's not that the genjutsu couldn't even deal with a little girl, but as mentioned in the previous paragraph, the little girl woke up quickly. Because the general genjutsu only needs to confuse the enemy for a few seconds to end the battle. Most genjutsu doesn't deliberately pursue the persistence of the genjutsu. Also, the immersion of the genjutsu is also a problem. Finally, the Chunin mentioned here doesn't necessarily specialize in genjutsu. It's like a math professor who can't solve a Chinese question. The middle-aged woman looked at Tsunade expectantly. Tsunade-sama. Tsunade walked into the ward and saw the little girl sleeping soundly. There was a trace of surprise in her eyes. It was indeed successful, but I still need to test it again. With that, Tsunade suddenly clenched her right hand. Boom. The sound of the air being squeezed made everyone instinctively shrink their shoulders. However, the little girl on the chair just licked her lips and didn't even breathe. This level of immersion. Did you construct a complete and real world? Tsunade sighed and looked at Garashi with a complicated tone. Perhaps, genjutsu ninja is more suitable for you. Whether it's medical ninjutsu or genjutsu, as long as it can help everyone, I will try my best to learn it. Garashi clenched his fist like Tsunade and said firmly. As he spoke, he changed the topic. However, this illusion doesn't actually need much realism, right? Why do you say that? Tsunade asked with interest. Because we are children, how can children care about whether the world is real or not? Garashi said matter-of-factly. Tsunade looked slightly startled. It seems to be true. For children, an absurd world may be more in line with their fantasy. Garashi continued, also, I just talked with Anko Mimi for a long time, and I know what she is longing for. Is it family or friends? Tsunade asked softly. Garashi shook his head. No, in fact, Anko Mimi's dream is very simple. She just wants to eat red bean soup again. is because sweets can make people happy. That's why I gave her such a name. Anko's mother held her waist and said with a little embarrassment, "It's just that the price after the war is too high. So, I deliberately designed an illusion for her where the whole world is red bean soup." Garashi opened his arms as if he was seriously describing the world of red bean soup. Such an illusion is really difficult for you. Tsunade couldn't help but laugh and immediately sighed, "But such a simple illusion, no one can think of it." "Little guy, you are really good. I'm just a little more attentive and understanding than the others," Shushi said, a little embarrassed. Tsunade whispered as if she was asking, "Listen and understand?" Shushi nodded vigorously. Yes. I think doctors can not only treat physical pain, but also spiritual pain and confusion. We also need to guide and comfort them. Only by listening and understanding their real feelings can we find the most suitable treatment for the patient. Learn to listen and learn to understand the real feelings of the patient. Tsunade's heart moved, and for the first time she looked at Garashi as an equal. He is better than other medical ninjas not only in talent and effort, but also in his attitude and responsibility as a doctor. Chapter 23. After the operation, Anko's mother stood outside the operating room and thanked them profusely. "Noya-sama, Tsunade-sama, thank you very much." Noya-sama smiled and joked, "You seem to have forgotten one person." Hearing this, Anko's mother also reacted quickly, "Dr. Garashi, and you, thank you very much." Garashi's little face was tense, but the corners of his mouth couldn't stop rising. This is the first time I've been called a doctor." Seeing this, everyone also smiled. They didn't expect that the steady and reliable little Garashi couldn't stand it after being called a doctor. However, this kind of Garashi was more like a child. Red Bean, on the other hand, was staring at Mustache with its big round eyes. Its eyes were filled with, "Big brother, can I still have that kind of dream in the future?" "Of course you can, as long as you learn genjutsu in the future, you can have any kind of dream you want." "Wow. Then I want to eat glutinous rice balls, tricolor balls, red bean balls." Mom, don't pull me." "Do you want to die even if it's a dream? Do you want to eat so many sweets that you can't walk in the future?" "I don't care. It's better to be so fat that you can't walk than to be so hungry." The mother and daughter played and laughed as they walked away, and everyone smiled at this warm scene. Suddenly, Garashi looked up and asked, "Tsunade-sama, is our wood leaf the winner of the last war?" Although she didn't understand why Garashi suddenly asked this, Tsunade sighed empathetically, "How can there be a winner in a war? I'm just thinking, if even the villagers of Konoha have such a hard life, how difficult would it be for the people in the small countries affected by the war? I'm just thinking, if even the villagers of Konoha live so hard, how difficult would it be for the people in the small countries affected by the war?" Tsunade suddenly fell silent, inexplicably thinking of the three little guys saved by Jiraiya in the Hidden Rain village. However, this kind of thinking. Looking at Garashi, Tsunade's eyes were in a trance. He really looks like Jiraiya, and can learning medicine really save the world? Garashi whispered in confusion, then immediately pulled himself together and looked at Tsunade. "Tsunade-ma, can you please guide me in my cultivation?" Tsunade was stunned and she was silent for a moment. "Why me?" Garashi said matter-of-factly, "Of course it's because you are the greatest medical ninja in Wood Leaf." "The greatest medical ninja?" Tsunade laughed at herself, then shook her head under Garashi's expectant gaze. "I have no intention of recruiting disciples." "Tsunade-sama, you." Nonayu looked anxious and wanted to dissuade her. "It's all right, Sister Nanoyu." Garashi was a little depressed at first but soon said with vitality, "It must be because I'm not good enough, so Tsunade-sama doesn't want to guide me in my cultivation." With that, Garashi shouted as he walked away, "Tsunade-sama, I won't give up." Looking at Garashi's back, Tsunade looked sad. "It's really like you." Rope tree. As if returning to the nightmarish scene again, the blood couldn't be stopped at all, and Tsunade's body trembled in fear. Blood. Murmuring, Tsunade suddenly woke up from the nightmare, and then finally noticed a fact that she had ignored before. "Although I didn't preside over the operation this time, I didn't deliberately avoid it. Why don't I feel that kind of fear and despair? Is it because I was influenced by his beliefs?" On the other side, Garashi, who returned to the lounge, also felt a little helpless. As expected of Tsunade-sama Tsunadeheim, it seems that to overcome this difficulty, I have to start from another angle. Even so, Shushi didn't feel too disheartened.
His so-called plan was just to push forward one of the many possibilities. If it's too easy, he may not cherish it. In that case, it's time to release those rumors. Thinking like this, Garashi's mouth showed a gentle smile. Don't let me down, senpai. A week later, in a remote and quiet corner of the ninja school, the original peaceful atmosphere was broken by a burst of laughter and ridicule. Is this the source of your confidence? It doesn't seem that good? Don't think that you're a ninja just because you learned some cloning technique. You're still far from it. That's right, if you want to resist us, at least take out a D-class ninjutsu. D-class ninjutsu, are you looking down on Shunin boss's strength? A group of third-grade students dressed like delinquents were playing, and the boy in the middle frowned. Well, don't waste time with them. Understood. One of the delinquents came out and squatted on the ground. Looking at your appearance, it seems that you're not convinced? A few fresh-faced students were knocked to the ground, glaring at them angrily. It's useless to be convinced. In the world of ninja, strength is everything. The delinquent patted the leader's face and said with a smile, as a reward for teaching you this truth, shouldn't you lend us your money? The leader's face turned red. I won't lend you my money. The delinquent didn't get angry, he was still smiling. Of course, it's your freedom to lend or not, but maybe we'll talk to you every day. Don't be so happy, after all, we third-grade students are your best brothers. Hearing him say this, the other second-year students were also a little scared. Yang Tai, give it to them. Yeah, it's not the first time anyway. Seeing his companions shrink back, Yang Tai could only say with a face full of humiliation, I agree. Seeing this situation, the other delinquents laughed loudly. How boring, admitting defeat just like that. I thought there would be a good show to watch today. Being provoked by them, Yang Tai shouted, You only dare to bully us. If you have the ability, go find trouble with the first-grade students. Hearing him say this, the faces of the delinquents became a little ugly, but Yang Tai continued to shout, What, Uchiha? In front of Naruto-sama, you don't even dare to fart. What did you say? Shunin, who had been watching coldly, suddenly looked at Yang Tai with a cold face. Did I say something wrong? Yang Tai shouted, It's already spread in the school that you and Uchiha don't even have the courage to stand in front of Asuma. Chapter 24. In the woods, Uchiha Shunin looked at the people around him with a cold expression. Tell me, how many of you know about this? The group of hoodlums looked at each other. It was the first time they saw their boss so angry. They still remembered clearly what had happened to the second-year student who had spouted nonsense. Ahem, boss, it's just a group of bored kids talking nonsense, there's no need to. A hoodlum stood up to comfort him, but before he could finish, he was frightened by Shunin's fierce gaze and swallowed the rest of his words. Those bastards can insult me, but the glory of the Uchiha clan is not to be blasphemed. Blasphemy? Isn't that a fact? The hoodlums complained in their hearts, but they still said righteously, Yes, the Uchiha clan is the clan that founded the Woodleaf clan. Whether it's history or heritage, it's not comparable to the Sarutobi clan. Listening to them, Shunin felt a little relieved. Well, now come with me to find trouble with that Asuma. Wait, Shunin boss, calm down. Shunin boss, don't go. The group of hoodlums stopped him in fear. If they had the idea of continuing the tradition, until the first year, after 2 months of observation, they have long since given up this plan. Not to mention the 2 monster-level newcomers, the amazing cohesion is enough to make them tremble. The difference in numbers between the two sides is 7 or 8 times, how can they fight? Shunin's face became very ugly. What do you mean? Do you think I can't even deal with a newcomer 2 years younger than me? Of course not, that Asuma is certainly nothing. The group of hoodlums tried to dissuade him. But they have many people. Hearing this, Shunin's face instantly turned into a pig liver color. It has always been them bullying others by relying on their numbers, but now it's the other way around. I don't care, I must let those bastards know that we, the Uchiha clan, are the strongest clan. Shunin shouted loudly. Sure enough, it's coming again. The group of hoodlums wailed in their hearts, but they also knew that their boss had perfectly inherited the temper of the Uchiha clan. Once he decided on something, even the 9 Bijou couldn't pull him back. Actually, it's not like there's no way at all. A dog-headed strategist among the hoodlums muttered softly. Hurry up and say it. That Sarutobi Asuma doesn't have a good relationship with that group of rookies. They only got together because of Clearwater Rinstone. So, are we going to deal with that Shimizu Garashi first? Shionyen asked, rubbing her chin. Don't. That Shimizu Garashi's reputation in the first years is too high.
If we touch him, that group of freshmen will definitely fight us to the death. The inept advisor almost broke out in cold sweat. Xiaonian asked impatiently, "Then what are you trying to say?" The inept advisor rubbed his hands and chuckled. "What I mean is that we should separate those marginal characters step by step." Xiaonian's eyes lit up. "Say it more clearly." "Those freshmen aren't monolithic. As long as we declare that we will only find trouble with those who aren't popular among them, the other freshmen will definitely be happy to see those who don't fit in. Then, step by step, we will divide that group of freshmen into multiple groups. When the time comes, let alone standing up for others, I'm afraid that they will fight among themselves." "Wow, it's really despicable, but I like it." In the history class, the 8 kami saints were enthusiastically explaining. The ninja school system is the creation of Nidame Naruto. This system not only cultivated a large number of talents for the Woodleaf clan, but also alleviated the conflict between the ninja clans and the common ninjas to a certain extent. Therefore, the ninja villages of various countries are eager to imitate this system, which has had a very profound impact on the ninja world. It's not an exaggeration to say that it has changed the overall pattern of the ninja world. But do you know what are the most important steps in the process of establishing a ninja school? However, the students below were sleeping, talking, and playing, but only a few were listening to his lecture seriously. Faced with this situation, the 8 kami saints had no choice but to use his trump card. "Garashi, you answer the question." Soon, the girls in the class instantly became energetic. Seeing this situation, the 8 kami saints couldn't help but feel a little jealous. If Sensei was 20 years younger, my charm wouldn't necessarily be worse than Garashi's. It's basic education, graduation gift, and guidance team. Garashi stood up and seriously analyzed. In the Warring States period, although the major ninja clans had their own ninjutsu secret techniques, it was difficult to give enough training to the clan members in the areas they weren't good at. This also caused many talented ninjas to be buried because of the problems in their path. After entering the ninja village era, the rich content of basic education can guide a large number of trainee ninjas, so there won't be a phenomenon of burying talents. For the large ninja clans with more comprehensive education facilities, they are attracted to join the school because of the graduation gift. Even for the large ninja clans, it's difficult to obtain advanced ninjutsu of B class and above, not to mention advanced ninjutsu that is just suitable for their corresponding attributes. As for the guidance team system, to a large extent, it reduces the risk of sacrifice for the new ninja, so that the new ninja can grow up as soon as possible. Not only that, but the guidance team also serves as a link between the civilian ninja and the clan ninja to a certain extent, so that the various classes that originally had barriers to integrate with each other. The 8 kami saints nodded approvingly and asked again, "Several other major ninja villages are also imitating our system, but do you know why their teaching results are far inferior to our Woodleaf?" This time, without waiting for everyone to answer, the 8 kami saints said, "There are actually many reasons, but in my opinion the most important is the contribution made by Nidame Naruto. Nidame Naruto has created countless ninjutsu and forbidden jutsu in his life, and many of them are still in a state of semi-completion, but it is these ninjutsu that have greatly enriched our ninjutsu library, so that our students can choose a path without losing sight of the way forward. This is something that the other major ninja villages will never be able to catch up with." "Wow. So Nidame Naruto is so powerful? Wait, after class, I want to be Nidame Naruto." Seeing this situation, the 8 kami saints felt gratified. In Woodleaf, Nidame Naruto happens to be in an awkward position. The first Hokage founded Woodleaf and pacified the Warring States period, so of course his reputation is much higher than Nidame's, and now that the third Hokage is in power, all kinds of achievements and propaganda will naturally overshadow Nidame's. So many children have never even heard of Nidame, which is simply intolerable for Nidame fans like Nidame. After feeling gratified, the 8 kami saints continued, "Although you can also accumulate advanced ninjutsu after graduation. But it is not easy. In a sense, the advanced ninjutsu chosen as a graduation gift will be the only advanced ninjutsu you can have for a long time after graduation. Choosing a B-class ninjutsu as a graduation gift will allow you to pass through the Chunin and Genin stage more smoothly, but the price is that you will have to spend more energy to exchange for an A-class ninjutsu, and if you choose an A-class ninjutsu as a graduation gift, you may lack an advanced ninjutsu as a trump card before you become a jonin. Although you are still far away from graduation, you can already think about it in advance. This will be your homework after class. Now, class is over." Chapter 25. From Garashi's point of view, the ninja school's curriculum is actually a subtle way to dilute the family's imprint. However, for children these are not important. What really attracts them is, wow, I want to choose the first Dame-sama's tree world descent. Idiot. Would release his bloodline limit, you won't be able to learn it even if you choose. How dare you say I'm an idiot? Look at my water release. Great waterfall technique. Who doesn't know how to spit? Look at my water release. Water ripple. In this lively atmosphere, Asma ran over and sat on the table in front of Garashi without any hesitation. Have you thought about what to choose as a graduation gift? I'll go first. I'm going to choose fire release. Ash concealment technique. Kurenai's fingertips gently touched her delicate chin. I want to choose genjutsu, dark walk technique. Asma then asked with great interest, Garashi, what about you? Shushi crossed his arms in front of his chest and smiled gently and lazily. As for me, spiritualization. At this time, the girl sitting behind Garashi suddenly said timidly, Spirit transformation technique? Garashi turned around and tilted his head. Shizen-san, is there a problem? It seems that she didn't dare to look directly at Garashi's eyes. Shizen shyly lowered her head and asked in a low voice, Garashi-kun, why do you want to learn this ninjutsu? Garashi said with a sincere face, if I can learn this ninjutsu, I can help everyone in the future. Even on the battlefield, I can get everyone's information first. Hearing this, Shizen couldn't help but say, but people who learn this ninjutsu will be targeted by enemy ninja villages, and when you use this ninjutsu, it's the most dangerous moment for your body. Why do you want to learn this ninjutsu? At the end of her speech, her soft voice became agitated and sharp. Garashi smiled gently. Student Muin, do you think the senior who invented this technique thought about this problem? Hearing Garashi say this, Shizen subconsciously recalled the gentle face of that man. Although she was still very young at the time, that kind of care had been engraved in the depths of her memory. It was this memory that made her instinctively refuse to answer, I don't know. Garashi smiled, his eyes were full of longing. The so-called ninjutsu, isn't it created by the will of the ancestors? Wouldn't it be a pity if no one inherits its will? Jingyin felt a sense of loss. She murmured the words Garashi had said. Inherit, will, wait. Asma waved his arms and interrupted their conversation. Spiritualization is an S-rank ultimate ninjutsu. Even if it's you, Garashi, it's almost impossible for you to learn it. Asma, this is not like you. Garashi turned around and smiled gently. Even if it's an ultimate ninjutsu, isn't it also created by people? What our ancestors can do, can't we even repeat the path they walked? If we don't even have this kind of courage, how can we create a better future? Hearing this, Asma shouted with his blood boiling. You are right, I also want to choose an ultimate ninjutsu. However, Ibiki's voice came faintly from the side. There is no ultimate ninjutsu with fire attribute in the book. Ah no, with a smile, Garashi turned his eyes to Shizen again. As for the question just now, I already have the answer. Whether it's the hostile shinobi village or the weakness of the body, in fact, it can be answered with one answer, companions. Asma, Kurenai, if it's you, you can protect me, right? Asma, who was still wailing about the fact that there was no ultimate ninjutsu in the book, suddenly stopped and shouted in a loud voice. Of course, if you want to deal with Garashi, you have to step over my dead body first. Kurenai gritted her teeth. Bastard, why did you answer so quickly? At this time, Shizen also woke up from her daze and looked at Garashi with eyes that seemed to be shining like stars. Garashi-kun, actually, the person who created the spiritualization was my uncle Kato Duan. Garashi showed a trace of surprise at the right time. No wonder you were so surprised when you heard that I was going to choose spiritualization, so... Shizen bit her lower lip. Although this jutsu is already owned by the village, Garashi wasn't surprised by this. After all, Woodleaf's patent didn't extend for many years after the inventor's death. But my uncle still has the experience of practicing spiritualization. If Garashi-kun needs it, I can lend it to you. Garashi was overjoyed and asked, Really? Shizen nodded vigorously. Yes, if it's you, Garashi-kun. Just then Takatani Ryosuke dashed into the room like a gust of wind. He ran up to Shushi and gloated. Aha, Shushi, guess what I saw when I went to the bathroom? Asma said with a look of disdain. You didn't go into the girls' washroom, did you? Idiot, how could Lord Ryosuke do something like that? Ryosuke's face flushed red. I'll be direct. Mizuki was blocked by the third years. When he shouted, the whole class turned to look at him. Serves him right. Who told him to be so rude to the class leader last time? Yeah, if it wasn't for Garashi, who would care about him? Now that you mention it, I want to see how that guy got into trouble. Takatani Ryosuke was about to agree when he saw Garashi's serious expression and asked, Garashi, you're not thinking of saving that bastard, are you? Garashi nodded seriously. Seeing this, Ryosuke couldn't help but feel depressed. Is that guy that important? Every single one of you is important to me. Garashi's gentle gaze swept over everyone, his voice firm. I know that Mizuki-san isn't very sociable, and you could even say that he's a bit of a loner, but no matter what, he's still a member of our class. As long as he doesn't do anything to harm the class, he'll always be our comrade. The third years don't have the right to lecture us first years. Actually, Garashi's words weren't very convincing, but thanks to his perfect image, everyone's enthusiasm was instantly aroused. We first years are the best group. That's right, let's let those third years know that we're not to be trifled with. Like a torrent, everyone took the initiative to rush out behind Shushi. For a moment, the other seniors on campus were at a loss as they watched this scene in horror. Were these freshmen going to start a club on campus? How scary. Chapter 26. At the same time in the grove next to the toilet. Hey! Shuemu, who was forcibly dragged out of the toilet, shouted in horror, You, what do you want to do? A hoodlum walked out while pressing his finger bones and said with a smile, Nothing, just let you feel the tradition of the freshmen. What tradition? It's just that we seniors will give you some pointers. After that, you just have to give us some compensation. Shuemu could naturally hear their bad intentions, but he still asked with some hope, Can I not give pointers? A group of hoodlums laughed. How can that be? We third-year seniors are your best brothers. If we say we will give you pointers, then we will give you pointers. Shuemu's heart gradually sank. While looking for an escape route from the corner of his eyes, he used words to attract the attention of the other party. Why me? There are so many people in the first year. Of course it's because you are the easiest to bully. Who told you to have no friends? Shuemu was shocked and suddenly remembered Garashi's several previous invitations. But soon he recalled the family he lost in the war. Friends? The existence of friends is not reliable at all. Family members will die, friends will die, only oneself is the only one worthy of trust. People who have nothing will not be afraid of losing. Seeing Shuemu silent, the hoodlums were a little dispirited. What they wanted to see was not this boring mime. You bastard, at least give some reaction. That's right, don't talk, pretending to be a master. Before his voice fell, Shuemu sprinted in the direction of the women's toilet. He knew that in terms of endurance he can't compete with this group of third-year students, he can only bet that they don't want to bear the abnormal reputation. Bastard, you dare to run away. However, before Shuemu could run a few steps, he was kicked away by someone. With such strength you still want to resist? Shunyan stood at the edge of the grove and said coldly. Usually he wouldn't work so hard, but this time is different, this time is for the glory of Uchiha. Seeing this situation, the hoodlums surrounded him with a grin. Run, why don't you run? You don't even listen to your seniors. Are all first-year rookies so arrogant? As if the pain hidden in his heart had been stimulated by the previous memories, Shuemu's eyes turned red as he pounced forward like a madman. Damn it, I'll fight it out with you. One of the hoodlums easily caught Shuemu's fist and commented with a smile, Good, very energetic. Shuemu, who had been well-versed in fighting since he was a child, suddenly kicked his opponent's crotch. The hoodlum who was beaten had his legs close together, kneeling crookedly on the ground, tears of bitterness gushing out from his eyes. The other hoodlums first felt a chill in their lower body, then they furiously rushed up. Damn bastard, beat him. Don't hold back. Naturally, Shuemu was no match for him. He could only lie on the ground and curl up into a ball. I want revenge. I must kill them. Shuemu roared furiously in his heart. It was only because of his tenacious willpower that he did not faint. But gradually even his consciousness became numb. Am I going to die? No, I don't want to die yet. Suddenly the punches and kicks on his body stopped. Is it finally over? In a daze, Shuemu forced his bruised eyes open. In his line of sight, the group of arrogant and unreasonable third-year students had all retreated to the side. Looking behind him, their faces seemed to be filled with horror and fear. What happened? This question flashed through Shuemu's swollen thoughts. Then he heard a familiar voice asking him from behind.
Shuemu, can you still hold on? Bear with it for a while, I'll treat you right now. In reality, Garashi himself had some doubts in his heart. In his estimation, Shuemu should not have suffered such serious injuries. Could it be that he had done something overboard to these third-year students? But the current situation seems to be more advantageous for me. Garashi's eyes narrowed, several plans rapidly forming in his mind. His hands, however, were not slow in forming seals. A faint green fluorescent light sprinkled on Shuemu's body, making him feel so comfortable that he almost moaned. On the other side, seeing Shuemu's miserable state, some of the students who originally did not have a good impression of him felt some sympathy in their hearts. Then one by one they glared angrily at the third-year students. Being stared at by so many burning eyes, the third-year students' legs turned to jelly. At the same time, in their hearts, they were blaming Xiongyan and that dog-headed military advisor. What happened to being marginal people who did not care? Xiongyan composed himself and gathered his courage to stand out. First years, what are you trying to do? Seeing that Garashi was treating Shuemu, Asma consciously stood in front of him. The answer should be very obvious, beating people up. Xiongyan could not help but stagnate. These words should have been said by them in the past. What was even more depressing was that the person who said these words was Asma, the person he wanted to beat the most. Xiongyan took a deep breath. This Shuemu, there should be a lot of people on your side who hate him, right? There's no need to make everyone unhappy because of such a person. Asuma's face was filled with displeasure. I only know that you've touched our first years. Garashi said that if you touch our people, you have to pay the price. The corner of Xiongyan's eyes twitched twice. He originally thought that as Naruto's son, the other party would be very unhappy to be suppressed by others. But now it seemed that this was not the case at all. At this moment, the dog-headed military advisor from before stood out. All right, let's fight one-on-one according to the rules. Asma's eyes widened. A third-year student beating up a first-year student. You have the nerve to call it a one-on-one? The dog-headed military advisor waved his hand without the slightest awkwardness. Then let's fight one-on-two. Asma was a little undecided. He looked at Garashi. Finally, Shushi helped Shuemu stabilize his injuries and stood up. In an instant, everyone's eyes were focused on Garashi. Anticipation, jealousy, fear, admiration, and so on. He's obviously just a freshman, but this kind of momentum that can stir the wind and clouds is really enviable. So powerful, if only we had such a strong person in the second year. The seniors of the other grades who came with the large group also became excited when they saw this scene. Garashi didn't answer directly. Instead, he looked at Shizen first. Shizen, classmate, you should also know medical ninjutsu, right? Ha! She didn't expect Garashi to call her in front of so many people. Shizen lowered her head nervously. Yes, I know a little. That's good. Garashi nodded and then looked at Xiongyan and the others with a sharp gaze. We are all ninjas, don't need to talk about one-on-one fighting. Hearing Garashi's words, the faces of the first-year students were filled with kind smiles. Seeing this situation, the third-year delinquents panicked. Wait, don't come over. Before the voice fell, the crowd with a ball of fire in their hearts had already rushed forward. For a moment, screams, wails, and begging for mercy echoed rhythmically in the mountain forest. The other grades all trembled in fear as they watched this scene. In their hearts, they made up their minds that they would definitely not provoke the first years in the future. After about 10 minutes, Shushi finally stopped the group of wild beasts that had been released from their cages. Shizen, classmate, come with me to treat them. Oh. Although she was puzzled, Shizen wasn't an opinionated person. Hearing Garashi's request, she responded like a bug and followed. Xiongyan raised her swollen pig head and said with a backbone. Don't think that we will forgive you. Garashi looked up blankly. Forgive what? Xiongyan suddenly had an ominous premonition in her heart, but she still asked, don't you want to ease the relationship with us? Garashi shook his head and smiled. I just want to beat you up after curing you. The other delinquents were dumbfounded. At this moment, Garashi's image in their eyes was even more terrifying than the devil. Chapter 27. La 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 la, I'm back. Hearing the brisk tune coming from the entrance, Tsunade, who was lazily buried in the sofa, reluctantly raised half of her head. Shizen, when are you going to cook dinner? I'll be right there. Shizen was a little helpless. It was Tsunade-sama who promised her uncle to take care of her. Why did it feel like the roles were reversed? However, Shizen didn't reject this change. For her, it was more like home. Tsunade slowly slid down the sofa like a slug. Then, Asine caught a glimpse of the corner of her eye made her spirit suddenly cheer up, and she asked excitedly, "Shizen, did you fight with others at school?" In Tsunade's view, Shizen was a good child, but her character was too soft, and she would be easily taken advantage of in the future. You know, she fought all the way to the ninja school. As Tsunade Haim's disciple, how could she not fight? Jingyin patted her dusty sleeves and nodded excitedly. And then, for a good child like her, today's group fight experience was like a sudden opening of the door to a new world. I told you a long time ago it's cool to beat people, right? Tsunade excitedly taught Shizen her previous experience as a bully. Of course, it's not good to beat people casually. It's best if there are one or two guys in your class who deserve a beating like Jiraiya. Shizen waved her small fist with some dissatisfaction. What? We're fighting a just war against the oppression of evil forces. Tsunade was at a loss. Where did she learn this novel language? Seeing Tsunade's confused face, Shizen took the initiative to explain. It's those third-grade bad guys who bullied a classmate in our class. Then, Garashi-kun took us to take the initiative to find those bad guys to settle accounts. Our whole class went out together, and those third-grade people were so scared that they didn't even dare to say a word. And after we beat them up, Garashi-kun asked me to treat those bad guys with him, and then we beat them up again. Shizen became more and more excited, and in the end, her face became red. That kid has such courage. Tsunade's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. When she heard that he treated those people, she thought that Garashi wanted to reconcile with those people. But they didn't expect him to do it just to beat them up again. However, it is indeed very satisfying. Tsunade nodded secretly. Last time she saw Jiraiya's universal love in Shueisha, but this time she saw Shueisha's unyielding love in him just like her. Thinking of this, Tsunade suddenly realized another problem. Wait, did you say the whole class? Jingyin tilted her head. Is there a problem? Tsunade asked curiously, don't you have any concerns about a group fight? Moreover, from what you said earlier, the person you're dealing with this time isn't a good person. Aren't you afraid that someone will take revenge on you after this? Yeah. Jingyin nodded foolishly at first as if she suddenly realized something. We only heard about it from Garashi-kun, so we followed without thinking about anything else. But soon she waved her hand confidently and said, but don't worry, we helped that classmate this time, and the next time we are bullied the other students will definitely help us. Moreover, those bad guys in the third grade are now afraid of the class leader. With Garashi-kun they won't dare to provoke us at all. With just one sentence he can make people follow him with all they have. This kind of trust is really enviable. Tsunade sighed softly. If it weren't for the fear of blood, I would be very happy to accept such a disciple. Uchiha clan in a mansion with the characteristics of the Warring States period. The middle-aged ninja sitting in the atrium suddenly opened his eyes and asked indifferently, "Where are you going?" Shunian, who was tiptoeing through the atrium, stiffened and turned back with her head drooping. "Father. About the injuries on your body, aren't you going to explain to me?" Shunian curled her lips. "Someone has already told you." The middle-aged ninja asked in a stiff tone. "I want to hear it from you." Shunian helplessly knelt down and immediately made a painful cry. "What's wrong with you? My butt was beaten and I can't sit still." Seeing Shunian constantly twisting her body and finally in a posture with her butt raised high, the middle-aged ninja almost fainted directly. Taking a deep breath, the middle-aged ninja calmed down. "Now you can say it," Shunian said with her butt raised. "Simply put, I was beaten for the glory of the Uchiha clan." The middle-aged ninja sneered. "Then should I praise you?" Shunian whispered. "I think so." "Nonsense." The middle-aged ninja slammed the table. "I didn't care about you for a while and you mixed with those garbage? Do you know that those little punks are just using your reputation as an Uchiha? As for you, they have never treated you as one of their own." "I know." "You know." You said you know?" "I'm not really an idiot, I can still distinguish whether people are good or bad to me." The middle-aged ninja suppressed his anger. "Then why do you still mix with them?" Shunian didn't answer directly but said something else. "Since I was a child, except for my friends in the clan, no one of my age was willing to play with me." "Is there such a thing? How come I didn't know?" "Of course you don't know. You're always with the clan leader and the others. You've never had time to care about me." The middle-aged ninja frowned and didn't speak. "I've tried to make friends with people from the outside world but I have failed.
In fact, it doesn't matter, but what I can't stand is them slandering the Uchiha clan behind my back, slandering the glory of the Uchiha clan that you regard as your own life. From that time on, I understood that instead of letting others like us, it's better to make them afraid of us. The middle-aged ninja's eyes flashed with a touch of emotion, but soon he scolded with a cold face. Stupid. People can't exist without the group, even Madara couldn't do it, so what makes you say such big words? It's better than you doing nothing. Such weakness is not the glory of the Uchiha clan. Get out of here. Humph. I can walk on my own. Xiongyan stood up and limped out while supporting her perky butt. After Xiongyan left, an almost inaudible murmur came from the quiet atrium. Did we really do something wrong? Obviously, we have taken the initiative to restrain our clansmen, and we have clearly expressed our goodwill to the Hokage, but why hasn't the situation changed at all? Is it because our clan is cursed, or someone is secretly pushing us behind the scenes? You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.